Imagine standing before a structure so ancient that the Great Pyramid of Giza would have seemed like a modern marvel in comparison. Picture a monument built thousands of years before the pharaohs ruled Egypt, a place where ancient hands shaped stone with purpose and vision we can barely comprehend. These aren't fragments of lost mythology, they are real, tangible places that still stand today. Silent witnesses to civilizations that mastered architecture when much of the world was still cloaked in primordial mystery. What secrets do these ancient builders leave encoded in stone? What drove them to create monuments meant to outlast generations, empires, even millennia? Today, we embark on an extraordinary journey to explore the 35 oldest surviving structures on Earth, each one a chapter in humanity's earliest architectural story. From mysterious megalithic temples that predate written language to breathtaking tombs that guarded the spirits of forgotten kings, we will travel across continents and through time to uncover the origins of human construction. This isn't just a list of old buildings, it's a detective story written in stone, a puzzle that archaeologists and historians have been piecing together for centuries. We'll walk in the footsteps of our ancestors, tracing their ambitions, their beliefs, and their astonishing engineering prowess that defies simple explanation. You're about to witness achievements that challenge everything we thought we knew about early human civilization. These structures weren't just shelters, they were calendars, temples, tombs, and monuments that connected earthly existence with the cosmic order. As we count down through these ancient marvels, you'll feel the weight of ages, the awe of standing where countless generations have stood before, and the humbling realization that human ingenuity has always reached for immortality through stone. So prepare to journey back in time, to walk among the oldest buildings ever created, and to discover how our ancestors built not just for their time but for all time. Our journey begins in the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, at a site that single-handedly forced historians to rewrite the entire narrative of human civilization. This is Göbekli Tepe, a hilltop sanctuary whose very existence was once thought impossible. Built around 9,600 BCE, this is not merely old, it is staggeringly ancient. To put that into perspective, this complex of stone circles and towering pillars was already millennia old by the time the first stone was laid for the Great Pyramid. It predates the invention of pottery, metal tools, and even the wheel. For centuries, archaeologists believed that complex society, with its grand monuments and organized religion, was a product of agriculture. The theory was simple. Once humans learned to farm and settled down in villages, they generated surplus food. This surplus then allowed for specialization, for artists, priests, and builders who could create something lasting. Göbekli Tepe turned that entire idea on its head. Here we have the world's first known temple complex, a breathtakingly sophisticated site constructed by hunter-gatherers. These were not settled farmers, but nomadic people who came together for a common spiritual purpose, proving that the human impulse to create monumental architecture and explore profound beliefs is far more ancient and deeply rooted than we ever imagined. The scale of the endeavor is almost incomprehensible. The site is composed of multiple circular enclosures, each defined by massive limestone pillars arranged in a ring. But the true marvels are the central pillars. These are not simple stones, they are enormous T-shaped monoliths, some weighing over 10 tons, expertly quarried, transported, and erected by a society without draft animals or advanced engineering. The pillars themselves are abstract representations of the human form, with arms, hands, and loincloths carefully carved into the stone. They stand like silent, stoic giants, guardians of a forgotten creed. And covering these pillars is a rich tapestry of artistry, a dense menagerie of carved animals. Foxes, cranes, scorpions, boars, and vultures are rendered with astonishing skill and vitality. This was not casual doodling. This was a symbolic language, a complex belief system etched into stone. These creatures likely represented a spiritual worldview, perhaps totems of different clans or characters in a rich mythological cycle that has been utterly lost to time. The people of Göbekli Tepe were not just builders, they were storytellers using stone as their parchment. What was the purpose of this place? It was clearly a ritual center, a destination for pilgrimages. There's no evidence of permanent domestic settlement, no hearths, no houses, no trash pits from daily life. Instead, people gathered here from across the region for ceremonies, to share knowledge and to reaffirm their shared beliefs. After each phase of use, these ancient people performed a final, mysterious act. They deliberately buried their entire sanctuary under tons of earth and rubble, preserving it perfectly for us to discover 11,000 years later. This intentional entombment suggests the site held immense sacred significance, and its retirement was part of its story. Göbekli Tepe stands as a profound challenge to our assumptions. It suggests that the need to connect with something greater than ourselves, to build temples, to create art, to gather in large organized groups, may have been the very catalyst that eventually led us to invent agriculture and forge the world we know today. It is the earliest architectural evidence of the human spirit reaching for the divine. Leaving the spiritual realm of Göbekli Tepe, our journey takes us to a different kind of ancient wonder, one rooted in the dawn of communal living and the need for protection. We arrive at the legendary city of Jericho, but we are not here for the famous walls that biblical stories would one day celebrate. We are here for something far older, a structure that whispers of a society's first steps toward collective security and social complexity, the enigmatic Tower of Jericho. Built around 8000 BCE, this stone tower is a breathtaking feat of Neolithic engineering that has survived for an astonishing 10,000 years. It stands nearly 8 meters tall today and originally was even taller, a colossal structure for its time that would have dominated the skyline of the ancient settlement. Unlike the ritualistic circles of Göbekli Tepe, the Tower of Jericho feels profoundly practical, yet its true purpose remains one of archaeology's captivating puzzles. This was not a project undertaken lightly. The construction would have required a massive coordinated effort from the entire community. Archaeologists estimate that it took over 11,000 working days to build, meaning that for weeks or even months, a significant portion of the population was dedicated to quarrying stone, moving earth and laying courses, all without the use of metal tools or advanced machinery. The tower is conical with an internal staircase of 22 steps that winds its way to the top, a design that is both sophisticated and intuitive. But what was it for? The most obvious theory is defense. Jericho is one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, and its residents had something incredibly valuable to protect, a permanent water source. A towering lookout post would have been invaluable for spotting potential threats from the surrounding plains, giving the community precious time to react. It speaks to a world where resources were precious and conflict was a real enough danger to warrant an enormous investment in communal safety. Yet there is another, more intriguing possibility. Some researchers point to its alignment with the summer solstice. When the sun set on the longest day of the year, the shadow of a nearby mountain would have fallen directly onto the tower before enveloping the village. This has led to the compelling theory that the structure may have also served a ceremonial purpose, perhaps symbolizing the power of the community over the forces of nature, or acting as a physical anchor for their cosmological beliefs. It might have been both, a formidable defensive structure that also held deep symbolic meaning, a guardian of both the physical and spiritual well-being of the people. This duality makes the tower a profound symbol of the Neolithic mind, a mind that was beginning to conceive of architecture as multifunctional, serving the needs of the body and the soul simultaneously. The existence of the Tower of Jericho alongside its protective wall shows us a society in transition, moving beyond mere survival towards something more organized and ambitious. It represents a monumental shift in how humans related to their environment and to each other. They were no longer just building shelters, they were building a collective identity, defining their space and creating a legacy in stone. This real, physical tower, standing 1,000 years before the Great Pyramid, inevitably makes us wonder if it was the distant memory of such an immense, ancient stone structure that eventually grew into the myth of the walls of Jericho, a story that would be told and retold for millennia. It is a powerful reminder that behind every legend there is often a kernel of truth, a truth built stone by stone by the hands of our earliest ancestors. From the singular monument of Jericho's tower, our next destination is an entire city, a sprawling urban experiment that challenges our very definition of what a city should be. We travel now to the vast Anatolian plain of southern Turkey, to a site known as Çatalhöyük. First inhabited around 7,500 BCE, this was not a town or a village, it was a true proto-city, one of the largest and most sophisticated Neolithic communities ever discovered, housing as many as 10,000 people at its peak. But if you were to walk through Çatalhöyük, you would find yourself utterly lost because this city had a design unlike any other before or since. It had no streets. Imagine a sprawling, honeycomb-like structure made of mud brick dwellings all crammed directly against one another, a single, massive, interconnected organism of a settlement. There were no paths, no alleyways, no public squares. The entire ground level was just a continuous outer wall, a defensive shell with no doors or windows. So how did anyone get inside? The answer is on the roof. Entry to every single home was through a hole in the roof, accessed by a ladder. The rooftops themselves were the streets, the avenues, and the communal plazas of this ancient city. Life unfolded above ground. People would walk across this artificial landscape of clay rooftops to visit neighbors, children would play, and communities would gather. This unique architecture speaks volumes about their social structure. With no obvious public buildings or temples, and with every home being largely equal in size and design, Çatalhöyük presents a fascinating picture of an early urban society that might have been surprisingly egalitarian, without a clear ruling elite or a centralized authority. The community itself was the governing body. Descending the ladder into one of these homes is like stepping into a time capsule of symbolic thought. The interiors were meticulously maintained, with plaster floors and walls smoothed over and repainted dozens of times across generations. And on these walls, the people of Çatalhöyük left an incredible artistic legacy. They are famous for their elaborate murals, considered by many to be the world's earliest landscape paintings. Some depict men hunting deer and wild bulls in vibrant detail, celebrations of the hunt that was still central to their way of life even as they began to domesticate crops and animals. But one painting is particularly astonishing. It shows a twin-peaked mountain with a pattern of dots erupting from its summit, looming over the seemingly haphazard layout of the village itself. For a long time, this was interpreted as the earliest known depiction of a volcanic eruption, possibly of the nearby Hasan Dag mountain. This suggests the people were not just recording daily life, but monumental, perhaps terrifying, natural events that shaped their worldview. Beyond the paintings, the homes reveal a deep and complex spiritual life. Built into the walls of many houses are plastered platforms that served as benches for daily living, but also as burial sites for the dead. Families would inter their deceased relatives beneath the floor, and some skulls were later carefully excavated, plastered, and painted to recreate the faces of the ancestors, then kept within the home. This practice of living alongside the physical remains of your forebears points to a powerful ancestor cult, a belief that the family's past and present were intimately connected within the very walls of their home. Each house was not just a shelter, it was a self-contained universe of daily activity, artistic expression, and spiritual connection, a cell in the larger body of a truly unique urban experiment that flourished for nearly 2,000 years. Leaving behind the vast communal labyrinth of Çatalhöyük, our journey now takes us to a much more intimate and windswept location, to a place that feels almost familiar in its design. We are traveling far to the north, to the Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland, where the fierce North Sea wind carves the landscape and the horizons stretch out forever. Here, standing defiantly against thousands of years of brutal weather, is the Nap of Hawor, dating back to around 3700 BCE. This is not a temple or a tower, but a home. And it holds an incredible title, the oldest standing stone house in all of Europe. For over 5,700 years, its low stone walls have endured, offering a breathtakingly personal window into the daily lives of a Neolithic family. What we see today are two sturdy, low-lying structures built directly into a midden pile of domestic waste that provided excellent insulation against the harsh Orkney climate. The two buildings are connected by a low, covered passageway, a design that speaks to practical ingenuity. The larger of the two was the main living quarters, while the smaller is thought to have been a workshop or a space for processing food. Stepping inside, the sense of connection to the past is overwhelming because this is not an empty shell. The stone furniture is still here, exactly where it was left millennia ago. You can see the stone shelves set into the walls, the central hearth that provided warmth and light, and the stone bench beds that would have been lined with comfortable hides and straw. The doorways are low, forcing a bow of entry, a physical act of reverence for the home that protected this family from the elements. Life here would have been centered on survival, but it was a sophisticated one. These were skilled farmers who cultivated barley and wheat in small plots and kept cattle, sheep, and pigs. The surrounding seas provided a bounty of fish, shellfish, and seals. The very midden that surrounds the house is a testament to their diet, filled with countless shells and animal bones. But they were more than just farmers and foragers. They were part of a vibrant and astonishingly advanced cultural community. The Orkney Islands are a Neolithic treasure trove, home to the magnificent stone circle at the Ring of Brodgar and the mysterious tomb of Misho, both built centuries later. The people of the Nap of Hawor were the pioneers, the first to truly settle and thrive in this challenging environment, laying the foundation for the spiritual and architectural wonders that would follow. Their home is a powerful reminder that the grand narrative of human history is built, quite literally, from the stones of countless ordinary lives, each one a story of resilience, family, and the universal desire to create a sanctuary in a vast and often unforgiving world. From the windswept stone shelters of the Orkney Islands, our journey now carries us to the warm, sun-drenched heart of the Mediterranean, to an archipelago steeped in mystery, Malta. Here, we encounter a structure of such breathtaking scale and ambition that its very name, Göbekli, means giant's tower in the local language. Built around 3600 BCE, these are the oldest of Malta's megalithic temples, and they are not merely old, they are ancient on a scale that defies belief. To stand before Göbekli is to stand before a monument that was already 1,000 years old when the first stone was set for the Great Pyramid of Giza, and 2,000 years older than the central stones of Stonehenge. This colossal complex represents a leap in architectural ambition, a statement in stone from a people whose name and language are lost to history, leaving only their awe-inspiring temples as a testament to their devotion and skill. The most immediate and overwhelming feature of Göbekli is its sheer mass. The walls are constructed from colossal blocks of coralline limestone, some weighing an almost incomprehensible 50 tons. Just try to picture that, a single stone slab heavier than a modern tank, hauled into place by a society without metal tools, without the wheel, and without any form of mechanical advantage beyond levers, ropes, and raw human effort. The outer walls are particularly massive, built with larger stones at the bottom and slightly smaller ones as they rise, creating a concave facade that curves inward gracefully. This wasn't just for show. This inward slope was a brilliant feat of Neolithic engineering, a way to ensure the towering walls remained stable and self-supporting over millennia. The entire complex is, in fact, two separate temples nestled side by side, each enclosed within this massive outer wall, a fortress of faith that has weathered the ages. Stepping inside, you move from a world of immense weight into a world of sophisticated, symbolic design. The temples are arranged in a distinctive cloverleaf pattern, a series of semicircular chambers or apses branching off from a central corridor. This isn't a random layout, it is a carefully planned architectural journey from the outside world into an increasingly sacred, enclosed space. The entrance to each temple was a monumental trilithon, two massive upright stones supporting a huge horizontal lintel. Passing through this stone doorway, a visitor would have left the bright Mediterranean sun behind and entered a shadowy, awe-inspiring interior. The spaces were once roofed over, likely with corbelled vaults made of progressively inward slanting stones, creating a dim, cavernous atmosphere perfect for ritual and ceremony. Small, window-like openings strategically placed in the walls may have allowed shafts of light to illuminate specific altars or carved decorations at precise moments, connecting the rituals inside with the cycles of the sun and moon outside. But who were the people who built this, and what were they worshipping? The most compelling clues come from the many statues and figurines discovered at this and other Maltese temple sites. The most iconic of these is the so-called Fat Lady statue. These are generously proportioned, seated figures with voluminous hips, thick legs, and large, pendulous breasts. For decades, these were automatically interpreted as mother goddess figures, symbols of fertility and abundance. This theory suggests Göbekli was the center of a vibrant fertility cult, a place to pray for healthy children, bountiful harvest, and prolific herds. However, some modern scholars offer a more nuanced interpretation. They point out that these figures are not necessarily depicting deities, but could represent venerated ancestors, powerful priestesses, or symbols of wisdom and authority in a society that may have been matriarchal or matrilineal. Their imposing size and seated posture convey not just abundance, but also power, stability, and a profound, grounded connection to the earth itself. The true magic of Göbekli lies in this beautiful mystery. We see a society capable of staggering collective effort, dedicating generations to quarrying, transporting, and elevating stones that challenge our understanding of their capabilities. They possessed a sophisticated knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and design, all channeled into creating spaces that orchestrated a powerful emotional and spiritual experience. Whether they prayed to a mother goddess, honored their ancestors, or followed beliefs we can no longer conceive of, their legacy is undeniable. They built for eternity, creating a sacred landscape that continues to inspire awe and wonder, a permanent mark on the world made by a people who otherwise vanished without a trace. Crossing the sea from the sun worship of the Mediterranean, we find ourselves in a different world entirely, a land of lush green hills and soft, misty light. Here, in the rolling Boyne Valley of Ireland, stands a monument that rivals the wonders of Malta and Egypt, not in sheer mass, but in pure, ethereal genius. This is Newgrange, a passage tomb constructed around 3200 BCE, a structure so advanced in its design that it feels like it was built by astronomers who could see through time. From the outside, it appears as a great grassy mound, a large circular hill almost 80 meters across and towering 11 meters high, surrounded by a dramatic curb of massive white quartz stones that gleam in the sun. It is a stunning sight, but the true magic of Newgrange is hidden deep within, a secret engineered to reveal itself on just one specific morning each year. To understand Newgrange, you must first step through its ornate entrance, past a single, massive carved stone covered in intricate, swirling spirals. This doorway leads to a long, narrow passage that stretches 19 meters into the heart of the mound. The passage is low and dark, forcing you to stoop as you move deeper into the earth, away from the modern world and into the realm of the ancient dead. This corridor is not random. It is precisely aligned to the southeast, waiting for the sunrise on the winter solstice, the shortest, darkest day of the year. At the end of this passage, you arrive in a cross-shaped chamber, a sacred space with 3 side recesses, each one a burial chamber meant to hold the cremated remains of the honored dead. And above you, soaring into the darkness, is a masterpiece of Stone Age engineering, a corbelled vault roof. This roof is one of humanity's greatest and most enduring architectural achievements. To build it, the architects of Newgrange did not use any mortar. Instead, they carefully layered large, flat stones in overlapping circles, each course jutting slightly inward over the one below. Layer by layer, the circle narrowed, closing the space at the top with a single capstone. This technique created a towering, beehive-like chamber that is completely self-supporting and, astoundingly, has remained perfectly waterproof for over 5,000 years. Not a single drop of moisture has seeped through that stone ceiling since it was sealed in antiquity. This was a permanent house for the spirits of the ancestors, a dry and secure eternal resting place built to last until the end of time. But the most breathtaking feature is a small, inconspicuous opening directly above the main entrance, known as the roof box. This slit, barely the size of a modern window, was the key to their entire celestial vision. For the rest of the year, the inner chamber is plunged into absolute, silent darkness. But for a few precious minutes around sunrise on the winter solstice, a narrow beam of sunlight penetrates through this roof box. It travels down the long passageway like a laser, growing wider and brighter as it moves, until it finally illuminates the entire central chamber in a dramatic and blinding burst of golden light. This was not a happy accident. It was precise, intentional astronomical engineering achieved by people who spent generations observing the slow precession of the sun. They built a mechanism of stone to capture the sun at its weakest moment, to prove that even in the deepest dark, the light would always return. For an agrarian society, this was more than a spectacle. It was a profound religious moment, a guarantee of rebirth and the cyclical nature of life, death, and the seasons. The meaning is further encoded in the art covering the stones. Newgrange is a gallery of megalithic art covered in spirals, diamonds, zigzags, and concentric circles. These are not mere decorations. The triple spiral, perhaps the most famous symbol, is carved deep into the stone at the entrance to one of the burial chambers, a place that would only be touched by the solstice light. Many researchers believe these spirals represent the sun, or the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, a permanent, symbolic echo of the light show happening above. Others see them as maps of the cosmos, or representations of the human trance states achieved during rituals. They are a permanent, silent language, a complex system of belief frozen in stone, waiting for us to decipher its meaning. Who were the people capable of such a feat? They were the Irish Neolithic farmers, a society that had mastered their landscape. They cleared vast forests for farmland and raised great herds of cattle, which provided not only food but also immense social wealth and status. Newgrange and its sister tombs, Noath and Dowth, required a huge, organized labor force and a sophisticated social hierarchy to plan, quarry, and transport the 200,000 tons of stone and earth. This was a society with a powerful priestly or ruling class, individuals who could command the resources and the vision to create a cathedral for the dead that also functioned as a perfect astronomical clock. Newgrange is a testament to their belief in the afterlife, their reverence for their ancestors, and their deep, intimate connection to the cosmos. It stands as a powerful, silent promise from the depths of prehistory that even after death, the sun will always find you. While the Gewith above Gantaja temples stand as a testament to raw scale and ancient ambition, another Maltese complex reveals a different facet of this lost civilization's genius, an astonishing flair for intricate artistry and a window into their most sacred rituals. Just a short journey across the island, the Toxian temples, built around 3150 BCE, offer a level of detail and decoration that is simply unparalleled in the prehistoric world. Where Gewith above Gantaja overwhelms with its massive walls, Toxian captivates with its elaborate stone canvases, inviting us to step inside and witness the vibrant spiritual life that once animated these sacred spaces. The moment you walk among the interconnected chambers of Toxian, your eyes are drawn not to the size of the stones but to what is carved upon them. The walls are a breathtaking gallery of prehistoric art. The most famous panels feature a procession of animals rendered with a fluid, confident realism that feels shockingly modern. You can see the powerful, heavy-bodied bulk of bulls, the sleek, agile forms of goats, and the robust shapes of pigs, all marching in a silent stone parade. These are not static symbols, they are dynamic, full of life, suggesting these animals held profound symbolic importance, perhaps as sacrificial offerings or as totemic representations of clan identities. Interwoven with this animal procession is another, even more hypnotic motif, the spiral. Intricate, swirling spiral patterns are drilled and carved with incredible precision into the soft Globigerina limestone. Some spirals are small and tight, others are large and expansive, creating a mesmerizing visual rhythm across the stone surfaces. This combination of the organic and the abstract suggests a sophisticated symbolic language, a complex mythology where the natural world and the cosmic order were seamlessly intertwined. But Toxian is more than just an art gallery. It provides some of the most compelling physical evidence of the rituals that took place here. In one of the temple's apses, archaeologists discovered a truly monumental find, enormous stone bowls still partially embedded in the ground. These are not small containers, they are hefty, hemispherical basins carved from single blocks of stone. Their size and permanence suggest they were not for everyday use but for central, communal ceremonies. The most widely accepted theory is that these bowls were used for animal sacrifice, a common practice in ancient religions to appease deities, ask for fortune, or celebrate a communal feast. One can easily imagine a ritual where a chosen animal was led into the temple, its fate sealed, with its blood or offerings collected in these vast stone receptacles. This gives us a tangible, if somewhat grim, connection to the ceremonies that filled these chambers with sound, smell, and purpose. Further deepening the ritualistic picture is the discovery of unique artifacts that point to Toxian's role as a major ceremonial hub. A stunning, skirted statue of a colossal figure was found here, though only the lower half remains. Its immense scale suggests it represented a deity or a venerated ancestor, a central idol around which worship might have focused. Even more intriguing is the evidence of what happened to the dead. Cremated human remains were found in specific areas, indicating that funerary rites and ancestor veneration were key components of the activities at Toxian, blurring the line between a temple for the gods and a sanctuary for the deceased. The design of the complex itself, with its narrow passages and hidden niches, creates a sense of mystery and controlled movement, orchestrating a spiritual experience where only the initiated could proceed to the innermost, most sacred chambers. The sophistication of Toxian truly underscores the pinnacle of Maltese temple culture. This was a society that had moved beyond mere construction into the realm of high art and complex theology. They possessed specialized tools to create their detailed carvings, a deep understanding of acoustics within the temple spaces, and a highly organized social structure that could support not just builders but master artisans and a powerful priestly class. The temples were likely the beating heart of the island, drawing people from all over for major festivals and ceremonies that reinforced social bonds and shared beliefs. When you stand in Tarxian, surrounded by the silent procession of stone animals and the hypnotic swirl of ancient spirals, you are not just looking at a ruin, you are standing in the most elaborate and artistically rich church of its time, a masterpiece of faith and artistry that thrived 1,000 years before the pharaohs built their first pyramid. Yet while Newgrange represents a tomb for the elite and Malta's temples served as communal religious centers, our next discovery reveals an entire community frozen in time, offering an unparalleled window into the daily lives of ordinary people during the Stone Age. We return to the Orkney Islands, but this time to the windswept west coast and a site that feels less like an archaeological dig and more like a village that its inhabitants have only just stepped away from. This is Skara Brae, a Neolithic settlement dating back to around 3180 BCE. Its story of discovery sounds like something from an adventure novel. For over 4,500 years, it lay completely hidden, buried under a massive mound of sand dunes that protected it from the elements and preserved it with almost miraculous completeness. Then, in the winter of 1850, a colossal storm, one of the most violent in living memory, battered the Orkney coast. The wind and waves scoured away the grass and sand from the side of a large mound known as Skara Brae, revealing the outlines of stone walls and the unmistakable architecture of a lost world. What emerged from the sand was not a tomb or a temple, but a home, in fact, an entire village complete with furniture. What makes Skara Brae so extraordinary is its state of preservation. Because it was sealed in sand for millennia, the stone structures are not just foundations. They are nearly complete buildings with walls that still stand waist-high, and most remarkably, their original stone furnishings still perfectly in place. Stepping into one of these houses is a profoundly intimate experience. Each single-room dwelling is almost identical in layout, centered around a square hearth which would have provided warmth, light, and a place to cook. To one side of the hearth is a large, box-like structure made from flat stone slabs. This was the bed, almost certainly filled with heather and animal furs for comfort. Opposite it is a smaller, similar bed, and directly across from the entrance, acting as a focal point for the entire room, is a stunning feature, a stone dresser. This was no mere shelf, it was a piece of furniture with two shelves supported by stone uprights, a Neolithic sideboard where prized possessions would have been displayed, perhaps intricately carved stone objects, tools, or ceremonial items. This arrangement reveals a society with a clear sense of domestic order, privacy, and even a form of social status expressed through personal belongings. The sophistication doesn't end with the furniture. The people of Skara Brae engineered a solution to one of life's most basic needs that was nothing short of revolutionary for its time, a form of indoor plumbing. Each house features a small, drain-like channel in the floor that connects to a larger communal sewer system that ran beneath the entire village. This complex network of drains, lined with flat stone slabs, would have allowed for the efficient disposal of wastewater from each home. While we can't call it a flush toilet in the modern sense, it represents a conceptual leap towards managed sanitation that wouldn't become common again for thousands of years. This was not a people merely surviving, they were proactively problem-solving, creating a comfortable and hygienic living environment in a challenging climate. The entire village was also designed with community and security in mind. The 8 houses we see today were linked together by a covered passageway, a narrow, roofed corridor that snaked through the settlement. This meant that during the fierce Orkney storms or the bitter cold of winter, a person could visit every single house in the village without ever having to step outside. This system of interconnected homes, all huddled together and sharing walls, speaks to a deeply communal way of life, one where cooperation was essential for survival. The village itself was also sealed off from the outside world. The passageways could be blocked from the inside, likely with stone slabs or hides, effectively locking the community in and any potential threats out. It was a self-contained, secure, and incredibly sophisticated Stone Age world. What did these people eat and how did they live? The midden heaps or ancient garbage dumps surrounding Skara Brae provide a detailed menu. They feasted on beef, lamb, and pork from their domesticated animals and harvested the rich bounty of the sea, cod, shellfish, and even seals and whales that washed ashore. They grew barley, which they likely made into a coarse bread or porridge, and gathered wild resources like hazelnuts. They were also skilled artisans, creating beautiful, polished bone pins and necklaces, and crafting distinctive, carved stone objects known as Skara Brae balls, whose purpose remains a mystery. They could be gaming pieces, weights for fishing nets, or ritual objects. Life here was undoubtedly hard, but the evidence points to a society that was stable, organized, and surprisingly comfortable. The consistent house design suggests a strongly egalitarian community without a single dominant chief. They had the time and security to not only build functional homes but to furnish them beautifully and engineer solutions for their comfort. Skara Brae doesn't show us the grand spiritual architecture of Newgrange or the massive temples of Malta. Instead, it gives us something arguably more precious, a complete picture of Neolithic domesticity. It shows us that 5,000 years ago, on the very edge of the known world, a family could gather around a warm fire in a secure, well-built home, their belongings displayed on a stone dresser, connected to their neighbors, and living a life of remarkable sophistication and community. Yet while the living residents of Skara Brae created a comfortable world of stone houses and communal drains, their society also possessed a profound and complex relationship with death, a relationship immortalized in monuments that are just as sophisticated as their homes. Just a short boat ride across the narrow Einhallow Sound from Skara Brae lies the island of Rousay, home to one of the most evocative and imposing Neolithic tombs ever discovered, the Mid-Howe Chambered Cairn. Built around 3500 BCE, this is not a hidden mound like Newgrange. It is a stark, powerful statement carved into the coastline. Its local nickname, the Great Ship of Death, is instantly understandable. From above, the tomb appears as a massive, elongated stone vessel, nearly 23 meters long, pointed at both ends like a great stone ship run aground on the shore, forever waiting to carry its occupants on their final journey. The sheer scale of the structure is a testament to the collective effort of the community. The tomb is a stalled cairn, meaning its long, central burial chamber is divided into 12 separate compartments by pairs of upright stone slabs that jut out from the side walls, creating a series of stalls reminiscent of a ship's hull. The entire massive structure was then entirely enclosed by a rectangular cairn of stones and rubble, and the roof, now missing, was likely made of large stone slabs. Today, a modern hangar-like building protects the tomb from the elements, allowing visitors to walk along a viewing platform and peer directly down into this ancient house of the dead, a perspective that makes the tomb's orderly design and human scale feel both intimate and awe-inspiring. It was inside these stone stalls that archaeologists made a discovery that speaks volumes about Neolithic funerary practices. The remains of 25 individuals were found within the tomb, but they were not laid out as complete, articulated skeletons. Instead, the bones were disarticulated and mixed together, suggesting these were secondary burials. This points to a multi-stage process of dealing with the dead. A body was likely first exposed elsewhere, perhaps on a platform or in a temporary grave, allowing for natural decomposition or excarnation by birds and the elements. After the flesh was gone, the bones were gathered and brought to the communal tomb to be placed with the remains of their ancestors. In this way, the individual was absorbed into the collective identity of the lineage, their physical remains mingling with those who came before them. The tomb was likely used and reused for centuries, with older bones sometimes being pushed to the sides to make way for new arrivals. This practice reveals a worldview where the boundary between life and death was more permeable than it is today. The ancestors were not gone. Their physical essence remained within the community's sacred space, and their spirits were likely believed to be active and influential forces in the world of the living. A tomb like Midhow was far more than a graveyard. It was a powerful territorial marker, a permanent stone claimed to the land farmed by their descendants. It was also a focal point for rituals and offerings, a place where the living could commune with their forebears to seek guidance, legitimize their authority, or ensure the continued fertility of their fields and herds. The care taken in its construction, the precise stonework, the organized stalls, the massive effort to create a permanent home for the dead shows that honoring ancestors was not a casual affair, but a central pillar of their society, as important as building sturdy homes for the living. The Great Ship of Death was, in the end, less about a journey to a distant afterlife and more about anchoring the community to its past, its present, and its land for all eternity. Far to the south of the Scottish Islands, in the English Channel, lies another windswept outpost with a Neolithic secret all its own. On the island of Jersey, a unique and layered sacred site tells a story of continuous reverence that spans an almost unimaginable timeline. This is Lahaug Bai, a monumental passage grave constructed around 3500 BCE, making it a contemporary of the great tombs in Ireland and Orkney. But what sets this site apart is its remarkable biography, a single location that has been held as profoundly sacred for over 5,500 years, with each new generation finding its own reason to venerate this ancient mound. The original Neolithic structure is a masterpiece of its kind. At its heart is a long, narrow passageway stretching nearly 20 meters into the earth, leading to a central burial chamber. The chamber itself is not a single room but a complex of 3 smaller, cell-like spaces branching off from a central area, creating a cruciform shape designed to hold the remains of the honored dead. The entire structure was then encased in a colossal mound of earth and rubble, one of the largest in Europe, rising over 12 meters high and dominating the surrounding flat landscape. This was a permanent and highly visible landmark, a constant reminder of the ancestors who had claimed this land and whose spirits were believed to still reside within. The engineering is precise and intentional. The passages align perfectly to the east, waiting for the celestial event that would have defined its most sacred moment. Just like at Newgrange, the architects of Lahaug Bai were master astronomers. Their target was not the winter solstice, but the equinoxes, the 2 days each year in spring and autumn, when day and night are of equal length. On the mornings of the vernal and autumnal equinox, the rising sun sits directly on the eastern horizon. At that precise moment, a ray of light shoots down the long, dark passageway of the tomb. For a few magnificent minutes, this beam of sunlight travels all the way to the deepest, darkest recesses of the central chamber, illuminating the sacred space that held the bones of the ancestors. This was not a coincidence, it was a carefully calculated and engineered event. For a Neolithic farming community, this alignment would have been a powerful symbol of balance, renewal, and the inextricable link between the cycles of the sun, the seasons of the earth, and the journey of the human soul after death. It was a divine promise of order in the universe, witnessed from within the womb of the earth itself. But the story of Lahaug Bai does not end in the Stone Age. This place held such a powerful and enduring presence in the landscape that it continued to be revered long after its original builders were gone. In the 1200 CE, nearly 4,000 years after the tomb was sealed, the Christian world arrived on Jersey. Instead of demolishing the ancient pagan mound, they did something extraordinary. They built upon it. At the very summit of the Neolithic earthwork, they constructed not one, but 2 medieval chapels dedicated to the Virgin Mary. This was a common practice of the early church, often building their places of worship on top of older, pre-Christian sacred sites as a way to absorb and Christianize the local spiritual landscape. For the people of the Middle Ages, the massive mound was simply a convenient hill. but their intuition to build a church there speaks to the site's undiminished aura of sanctity. Today, you can climb to the top of this 5,000-year-old mound and stand in a 1,000-year-old chapel, a breathtaking physical layering of human belief systems. The most compelling evidence for this continuous sacred thread comes from recent archaeological discoveries. Excavations around the base of the mound have uncovered ritual deposits left not by the Neolithic builders, but by people in the Iron Age, 2,000 years after the tomb was built. These weren't random objects, they were carefully placed offerings of pottery and other items, suggesting that even though these later people may not have remembered the tomb's original purpose or the precise meaning of the equinox alignment, they still recognized this as a profoundly special place, a numinous spot where the veil between worlds felt thin. They felt compelled to leave gifts to acknowledge the power of the site, continuing a tradition of veneration that connected them, however distantly, to the ancient ones who first raised the mound. La Haugbai is more than a tomb or a chapel. It is a rare and powerful testament to a universal human impulse to mark and honor those places where the earth itself feels sacred. Returning to the sacred landscape of Ireland, our exploration now turns to a tomb that stands apart from all others, not just in its design, but in its commanding role within one of the most significant ritual complexes in all of prehistoric Europe. In the heart of County Sligo, amidst a sprawling field of ancient monuments known as Carrowmore, lies a solitary, commanding cairn called Listighill. Built around 3,550 BCE, this is the central and largest tomb in a vast necropolis that originally contained over 60 individual monuments. While the other tombs at Carrowmore are almost all classic dolmens, small, simple chambers capped by a large roof, stone Listighill is something entirely different. It is a massive, rectangular cairn, a deliberate and dramatic architectural statement that marks it as the undeniable focal point of the entire complex, the spiritual heart from which this city of the dead radiated outwards. The most striking feature of Listighill, and what would have made it a breathtaking sight in its prime, was its brilliant outer skin. The entire cairn was once encased in a gleaming wall of white quartzite stones. Quartz holds a special, almost mystical significance in many ancient cultures. It is a stone that fractures light, sparkles with a vitreous luster, and can even generate a small electrical charge under pressure, a phenomenon known as piezoelectricity. For the Neolithic builders, this was surely a stone of power and magic. Imagine this massive white mound under the weak Irish sun, its quartzite cloak catching the light and shimmering like a beacon across the landscape. Under a full moon, it would have glowed with an unearthly, ethereal light. This was not a tomb meant to be hidden or forgotten. It was designed to be seen, to dazzle, and to draw the eye and the spirit towards it from miles around. The quartz wall transformed the cairn from a simple pile of rocks into a radiant, otherworldly object, a clear signal that this was a place where the earthly and the divine intersected. The tomb's internal structure further underscores its unique status. Unlike the simpler dolmens surrounding it, Listighill contains a sophisticated passage and chamber built from massive orthostats or standing stones. The entrance passage is aligned in a way that suggests another layer of celestial intention. While not as precise as the solstice alignment at Newgrange, the orientation of Listighill's passage is generally towards the rising sun around the time of the equinoxes and Samhain, the ancient festival marking the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter. This was a time deeply associated with the thinning of the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead. A beam of sunlight penetrating the passage at this potent time of year would have been a powerful visual spectacle, illuminating the inner chamber and perhaps symbolically awakening or welcoming the ancestors within. What was the purpose of this central, gleaming tomb within the larger complex? The most compelling theory is that Listighill served as the primary ceremonial hub for the entire Carrowmore landscape. The dozens of smaller satellite tombs, many of which have alignments pointing directly towards Listighill, likely represent the burial places of different family groups or clans. Their positioning creates a ritual geography, a physical map of social relationships centered on this one paramount cairn. It is easy to envision great seasonal gatherings here where people from across the region would converge. They would process between the smaller tombs of their own ancestors before culminating their rites at the brilliant white central mound. Here, under the shimmering quartz, community leaders or priests might have performed ceremonies that unified the living with all their collective dead, reinforcing social bonds and affirming their shared ownership of the land. The tomb itself may have held the remains of particularly venerated individuals, perhaps a lineage of chieftains or spiritual leaders whose authority provided the cohesion needed to create such an expansive and organized sacred space. Listighill was more than a tomb. It was the spiritual anchor of a vast ritual landscape, a dazzling, engineered symbol of a community's shared identity and their eternal connection to the land they inhabited. Shifting our focus from the gleaming quartz of Ireland to the rolling chalk downlands of southern England, we come to a monument that embodies the very essence of the Neolithic world's relationship with death and ancestry. This is the West Kennet Long Barrow, a colossal tomb constructed around 3650 BCE that served as a communal house for the dead for over 1,000 years. Situated just a stone's throw from the later enigmatic monument of Silbury Hill and the vast stone circle at Avebury, West Kennet is a foundational piece of one of the most sacred and ritual-dense landscapes in all of prehistoric Europe. To stand before it is to confront a structure of immense primal power, a 100-meter-long earthen mound, taller than a two-story house at its eastern end, that seems less built and more like a permanent feature of the earth itself, a ridge raised by the hands of giants. The scale of the barrow is a direct statement of the importance this community placed on honoring their dead. The mound itself is a breathtaking feat of labor, composed of an estimated 15,000 tons of chalk dug from massive flanking ditches that run parallel to the tomb. This was not a project for a single family or even a small village. It required the coordinated effort of many communities across the region, a collective undertaking that would have taken months to complete. The most awe-inspiring aspect, however, lies at the eastern end. Here, the facade is not simply a rounded mound of earth, but a towering, near-vertical wall of massive, interlocking sarsen stones. Sarsen is the same incredibly hard, dense sandstone used at Stonehenge, and the stones at West Kennet are enormous, some weighing several tons. They were carefully selected and fitted together to create a dramatic, imposing entrance to the realm of the ancestors, a stark, grey, mineral barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Passing through this formidable entrance, you leave the sunlight behind and enter a long, narrow stone passage that leads deep into the heart of the mound. This passage branches off into 5 separate burial chambers, 2 on each side and 1 at the very end. Unlike the dark, enclosed space of Newgrange, you can walk through these chambers today, a rare opportunity to physically move through an ancient funerary space. The chambers are constructed from colossal upright sarsen stones supporting equally massive capstones, creating cell-like rooms that would have felt both secure and sepulchral. It was within these 5 chambers that one of the most detailed pictures of Neolithic mortuary practice ever uncovered was revealed through excavation. Archaeologists discovered the remains of at least 46 individuals buried here over a period of more than a millennium. But these were not 46 complete, carefully laid out skeletons. The bones were in a state of organized chaos. Skulls were often grouped together in one part of a chamber, while long bones like femurs and tibias were stacked in neat piles in another. This clearly indicates that West Kennet was not a simple grave where bodies were buried and left to rest in peace. It was the stage for a complex, multi-stage funerary process that modern archaeologists call excarnation. When a person died, their body was likely first placed on a wooden platform or in a temporary grave elsewhere, exposed to the elements and scavengers. This allowed for the natural decomposition of the soft tissue. After a suitable period, the now clean bones were gathered by the living and brought into the tomb to be placed with their ancestors. But the process didn't end there. The bones were not simply dumped and forgotten. The evidence shows they were carefully sorted and rearranged over time. It seems that as new remains were brought into the crowded chambers, older bones were respectfully moved aside to make space, often being grouped by type. This practice suggests the tomb was periodically re-entered by the living, not just for new burials, but for ongoing rituals involving the ancestors. The bones themselves were not seen as objects of morbid fear, but as powerful relics, the tangible remains of the forebears who legitimated the community's claim to the land and provided a spiritual link to the past. The living curated the remains of the dead, maintaining an active physical relationship with them for generations. This intricate dance between the living and the dead is further evidenced by the tomb's final chapter. After 1,000 years of use, around 2400 BCE, the community decided to take the tomb out of service, but they did not simply abandon it. They performed a deliberate and massive act of closure. The burial chambers were emptied of their latest bone deposits, and the entire passageway and forecourt were meticulously filled to the ceiling with rubble, layer upon layer of earth, stones, and debris. This was not an act of disrespect, it was a final, profound ritual. They then dragged 3 enormous sarsen stones into place, completely blocking the towering entrance facade and sealing the tomb for eternity. In doing so, they transformed the Long Barrow from an active house of the dead into a permanent, sealed monument to all their collective ancestors. It became a silent, eternal landmark, a permanent and unchanging part of the landscape that continued to speak of their lineage and their deep, enduring connection to the land they called home. Traveling south from the great communal tombs of Wiltshire, we find a Neolithic masterpiece that offers a more intimate, yet equally profound, glimpse into the mind of its builders. Nestled in a quiet Somerset valley, the stony Littleton Long Barrow, also built around 3550 BCE, presents a different architectural vision from the towering sarsen facades of the north. This is a tomb built not of massive, imposing monoliths, but of thousands of carefully selected, locally quarried oolitic limestone slabs. From the outside, it appears as a long, grassy mound, serene and almost organic in the landscape. But to step inside is to enter one of the most beautifully designed and intricately crafted passage graves in all of Britain, a stone-lined journey into the underworld that feels both carefully planned and deeply spiritual. The interior is where stony Littleton truly shines. A long, central passage stretching for over 15 meters serves as the main artery of the tomb. But unlike the simple chambers of many other barrows, the architects here created a more complex and symbolic layout. From the main passage, 3 pairs of opposing chambers branch off, creating a series of 6-side cells. The final chamber sits directly at the end of the passage. This arrangement gives the internal plan a distinctive and graceful hexagonal pattern, a deliberate design that goes far beyond mere functionality. The effect is that of a stone honeycomb, a series of small, private rooms within the womb of the earth, each one intended as a final resting place for specific individuals or family groups. The craftsmanship is exceptional. The dry stone walling is precise, the walls curve gently inward as they rise, and the whole structure is capped with enormous stone slabs. This was a community that invested immense skill and care into creating a dignified, permanent, and organized home for their ancestors. One of the most captivating mysteries of stony Littleton is written in its very walls. As you move through the cool, dim passage, your eye is drawn to the individual stones. Many of them are not blank slate. They are embedded with natural fossils, most notably the spiral forms of ammonites. To us, these are fascinating relics of a prehistoric sea that once covered the region. But to the Neolithic builders who had no concept of deep geological time, these perfect stone spirals locked within the rock must have seemed like miracles. It is incredibly difficult to believe that their choice of these particular stones was accidental. The spiral is one of the most powerful and recurring symbols in Neolithic art, found from the tombs of Newgrange to the temples of Malta. It is widely thought to represent the journey of life, death, and rebirth, or the cycles of the sun, moon, and seasons. To build a tomb for the dead, a passage to the afterlife, using stones that already contained this sacred symbol naturally crafted by the earth itself, would have been seen as a sign of profound power and divine blessing. They were literally building their sacred space from preordained sacred materials, blending their own architecture with the earth's innate magic. The story of Stony Littleton took a remarkable turn in the 18th century, an era when ancient monuments were often viewed as little more than quarries for new building projects or curiosities to be hastily excavated and discarded. In 1766, a local farmer, in search of stone for road building, broke into the side of the barrow and plundered its contents, scattering the ancient human remains that had rested there for millennia. This act of vandalism, however, had an unexpected consequence. It exposed the interior of the tomb to the world and sparked the interest of a local antiquarian named John Skinner. He was captivated by what he saw and undertook the first proper investigation. More importantly, he recognized that this was a treasure that needed to be preserved for future generations. To mark this sentiment and to perhaps ward off further destruction, he had an inscription carved into a stone at the entrance. It reads simply, "This tumulus was opened in the year 1766. This small, weathered plaque makes Stony Littleton one of the earliest ancient monuments in the entire world to be actively protected and marked for preservation. It represents a pivotal moment in human history, the dawn of the idea that these structures were not just piles of old rock, but were priceless links to our shared past, worthy of respect and care." This bridge from the Neolithic mind to the dawn of modern archaeology makes a visit to this tranquil valley a journey through two separate layers of time, each one acknowledging the profound importance of the place in its own way. Venturing even further into the remote reaches of the Orkney archipelago, our journey takes us to a tiny, windswept island that feels like the very edge of the world. This is the home of Papa Westray, a low-lying islet separated from its larger neighbor by a narrow and often treacherous channel. Here, in profound isolation, stands another masterpiece of Neolithic engineering, the home of Papa Westray Chambered Cairn. Built around 3500 BCE, this tomb shares the same core purpose as Mid-Howe or West Kennet, a house for the ancestors, but it presents that purpose in a uniquely intricate and compartmentalized design that sets it completely apart. From the outside, the cairn appears as a large, rectangular mound of grass-covered stones, blending seamlessly into the island's natural contours. But to step inside is to experience one of the most complex and bewildering burial monuments in all of Northern Europe. Unlike the long, stalled cairn of Mid-Howe, the interior of this tomb is a stunning labyrinth of stone. A long, central passageway runs through the heart of the structure, but this is merely the main hallway. Branching off from this central corridor are no fewer than 12 small, cell-like chambers, arranged in 4 opposing pairs along its length and culminating in a larger end chamber. Each of these cells is its own distinct enclosed space, separated from the passage and from each other by carefully placed stone slabs. This creates a floor plan that resembles a stone spinal column with ribs splaying out from it, a highly organized and segmented architectural blueprint for the afterlife. The design is far from random. It speaks to a sophisticated social structure. Each of these 12 chambers was likely intended for a specific family group or clan within the larger community. This suggests a society that was already highly segmented, where individual lineages held distinct identities even as they came together to build a communal tomb. The tomb itself becomes a physical map of their social relationships, a permanent stone record of the different groups that made up this island society. The act of construction would have required immense cooperation, but the internal layout preserved their individual identities for eternity. It was a powerful way to balance the collective good with the importance of the individual family unit, even in death. Within these silent stone cells, archaeology has provided a remarkably intimate glimpse into the lives and deaths of the people buried here. The remains discovered within the tomb paint a picture of a resilient but challenging existence. Analysis of the bones reveals a population that was generally shorter and more robust than modern humans, with skeletons showing signs of the immense physical labor that was a daily fact of life. Their joints show evidence of osteoarthritis, a testament to a lifetime of grinding grain, hauling fishing nets, and working the land. Dental health was poor, with worn teeth and evidence of abscesses, likely caused by a coarse diet that included grit from stone-ground flour. Yet, this evidence of hardship is balanced by signs of a successful and adaptable society. Their diet was a rich and varied tapestry of the land and sea. Chemical analysis of the bones shows they consumed plenty of protein from domesticated animals like cattle and sheep, but also from a huge variety of seafood. The surrounding waters provided cod, saithe, and shellfish, while seals and even whales that stranded on the shore would have been a valuable bounty. They grew barley and wheat in small, protected plots and gathered wild resources. They were not struggling to survive, they were thriving in a demanding environment through a Chinese letter economy that expertly exploited every available resource. Perhaps the most captivating feature of this remote tomb is the art left behind by its builders. Carved into the stones of the chamber walls are a series of enigmatic symbols, a silent language from the deep past. The most common motifs are simple but powerful: pairs of concentric circles, some with a central dot, and deep, cup-shaped hollows pecked into the rock. These are not the elaborate spirals of Newgrange or the animal processions of Toxian. This is a more minimalist, abstract art form. Their meaning is lost to us, but we can speculate. The concentric circles might represent the sun, the moon, or the cycles of life. The cup marks could symbolize stars or perhaps be receptacles for ritual offerings of water, blood, or grain. These carvings transform the tomb from a simple repository for bones into a sacred text, its walls inscribed with the beliefs and cosmology of the people who built it. Each mark was a deliberate act, a communication with the spiritual world, or a permanent marker of ownership and identity within the house of the ancestors. The home of Papa Westre Cairn stands as a profound monument to a community that mastered its isolated world. They possessed a complex social structure, a rich and adaptive subsistence strategy, and a sophisticated spiritual life expressed through both grand architecture and subtle art. In the quiet cells of this 5,000-year-old tomb, we find not just the bones of the dead, but the resilient spirit of the living who carved out a meaningful existence on the very frontier of their known world. Leaving behind the remote islands of Scotland, our journey now brings us to the rolling chalk downlands of Oxfordshire in southern England. Here, nestled amidst a small beech wood just off the ancient Ridgeway path, lies a monument shrouded in equal parts history and legend. This is Whaleland Smithy, a majestic long barrow built around 3600 BCE. Its name does not come from its Neolithic builders, but from a much later era, 1,000 years of folklore that transformed this ancient tomb into the workshop of a mythical blacksmith. The legend, recorded by early medieval scribes, tells that the Saxon god Whale and the smith, a master craftsman of supernatural skill, had his forge here. Travelers whose horse had lost a shoe could leave the animal at the smithy along with a silver coin. Upon returning, they would find their horse newly shod, the coin gone, and the invisible smith's work complete. This beautiful story attached a practical, helpful magic to the site, ensuring its name and memory were preserved long after its original purpose was forgotten. It is a powerful example of how later cultures often wove their own myths around the mysterious stone structures left by their predecessors, unable to explain them but recognizing their inherent power and significance. Beneath this layer of Saxon myth, however, lies a far older and more complex reality. Archaeological excavation has revealed that Wayland's smithy is not one tomb, but two, built one on top of the other in a fascinating sequence that shows the evolution of Neolithic burial practices over perhaps a century. The story begins with the first monument on the site, now known as the Western Tomb. This was a much smaller, oval barrow bordered by wooden posts and a low stone curb. Inside this earlier structure, the remains of 14 individuals were found, all placed in a single collective burial. The bodies were not arranged in any formal order. They were simply laid side by side, suggesting a single event or a short period of use. This was a simple, communal grave for a group of people who likely died around the same time. A generation or two later, the people of the area embarked on a project of breathtaking ambition that completely transformed the site. They dismantled the original wooden and stone structure and built over it a massive, brand-new tomb, the magnificent long barrow we see today. This new monument was a statement of power and permanence. They constructed a grand, stone-lined entrance forecourt, flanked by massive sarsen boulders, creating a dramatic ceremonial space for the living to gather. From this forecourt, a long stone passage led into the heart of a huge, trapezoidal mound of earth and chalk. This passage gave access to two burial chambers on each side and a final chamber at the end, each one roofed with immense capstones. The entire structure was then covered by an enormous mound of earth, held in place by a neat, dry stone revetment wall. This second phase represents a monumental shift in thinking. Instead of a single-event burial, this was designed as a long-term house for the dead, an ancestral cathedral intended to be used for generations. The bodies found inside were not from a single event. They were the carefully sorted and placed bones of at least 8 individuals, showing evidence of the same complex excavation and curation practices seen at West Kennet. The community had moved from simply burying their dead to actively venerating their ancestors, creating a permanent, imposing landmark that dominated the physical and spiritual landscape. The two phases of Wayland's smithy provide a unique archaeological window into this crucial transition, showing us a society moving from simpler funeral rites toward a more complex, structured ancestor cult that required a grander architectural stage. It stands today as a powerful fusion of layers of time, a 5,600-year-old tomb for Neolithic ancestors, wrapped in a 1,000-year-old legend of a Saxon god forever guarding the ancient Ridgeway path. Our journey now takes a dramatic leap across the globe, from the misty barrows of Europe to the arid coastal valleys of Peru. Here, nestled in the Casma Valley, lies a discovery that fundamentally rewrote the history of an entire continent, Sechin Bajo. Dating back to an astounding 3,500 BCE, this complex isn't just old, it is a foundational pillar of civilization in the Americas, a site whose discovery shattered long-held assumptions and forced archaeologists to push the timeline of Andean complexity back by over 1,000 years. Imagine this: while the great tombs of Ireland and Scotland were being constructed, a society on the other side of the world was simultaneously embarking on its own architectural revolution, completely independent of influences from Europe or Asia. Sechin Bajo stands as a powerful testament to the innate human drive to build, organize, and create monumental architecture. The heart of Sechin Bajo, and its most defining feature, is its magnificent circular plaza. This was not a simple open space. It was a meticulously engineered sunken court, excavated deep into the earth and lined with walls of uncut stone and clay. The act of digging down, of creating a space below the natural ground level, is profoundly significant. In the Andean worldview, this likely represented a connection to the underworld, to the realm of ancestors and origins. This sunken circular plaza became a defining architectural form, a template that would be repeated and elaborated upon for millennia across Peru, serving as a sacred gathering place for ritual and ceremony. It was a theater for the community, a place where cosmological beliefs were acted out and social bonds were reinforced, all within a perfectly shaped arena designed to focus energy and attention inward. The sophistication of Sechen Bajo extends far beyond its symbolic footprint. The stonework here reveals a society that had already mastered complex construction techniques. The walls surrounding the plaza were not crude piles of rock. They were built using a method called shikra bag construction. This ingenious technique involved placing stones inside large, durable mesh bags made from the fibers of the shikra plant. These stone-filled bags were then stacked like bricks and covered in clay plaster to create sturdy, resilient walls that could withstand the seismic activity common to the region. This was a brilliant, innovative solution that demonstrates a deep understanding of materials and engineering, proving these early Peruvians were not simple villagers but accomplished builders facing complex environmental challenges. The true impact of Sechen Bajo was felt throughout the archaeological world with the discovery of a beautifully preserved frieze adorning one of its ancient walls. This artwork depicts a powerful, mythological figure, a man holding a knife in one hand and a serpent-like object in the other, often interpreted as a decapitator god or a shaman in a transformative state. The style and symbolism of this figure are incredibly sophisticated and bear a striking resemblance to iconography found at sites like Chavin de Huanta, which flourished over 2,000 years later. This was the revelation that turned Andean history on its head. It proved that the complex religious ideologies and artistic styles, which scholars had believed developed around 1000 BCE, were already fully formed and being expressed in monumental art by 3500 BCE. The roots of Andean civilization were far deeper and more ancient than anyone had dared to imagine. What does the existence of Sechen Bajo tell us about its builders? They were a coordinated, socially complex society capable of organizing large labor forces for long-term projects. The construction of the sunken plaza and its elaborate walls required planning, leadership, and a shared belief system strong enough to motivate such a collective effort. They were likely a sedentary or semi-sedentary people who had mastered agriculture, cultivating crops like beans and squash in the fertile valley, which provided the stable food surplus needed to support specialized artisans and builders. Sechen Bajo was not an isolated experiment. It was part of a wider cultural flowering in the area now known as the North Chico region, a cradle of New World civilization that was developing in parallel with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. This site forces us to expand our definition of where and how civilization began, reminding us that human ingenuity, driven by belief and community, could spark monumental achievements in the most unexpected corners of the globe. But the true marvel of Monte Ducati is its architectural form, a design so alien to prehistoric Europe that it feels like it was transported from another continent. Reached by a towering 80-foot-long stone ramp that rises at a gentle incline, the entire structure culminates in a vast, flat platform on top, an artificial mesa created by human hands. This was not a simple mound of earth. It was a carefully engineered geometric pyramid with a square base and sloping sides, a form that bears a startling and almost inexplicable resemblance to the much later ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia. The parallels are so uncanny that they have fueled decades of scholarly debate. Was this a case of independent invention, a brilliant solution that two cultures separated by thousands of miles and years arrived at separately? Or does it suggest some form of long-distance cultural contact or shared ancestral memory across the Mediterranean that we have yet to fully understand? Standing before it, you are faced with a profound architectural mystery, a structure that defiantly refuses to fit neatly into our understanding of prehistoric European development. The platform at the summit was clearly the focal point of the entire complex, a stage set between earth and sky. Archaeological evidence suggests this was the site of intense ritual activity. A large, flat stone slab was found here, its purpose chillingly revealed by the dark stains of animal blood and the remnants of ash from sacred fires. This was an altar, a place of sacrifice where the community likely made offerings to powerful, unseen forces. The act of ascending the long ramp to reach this high altar would have been a powerful physical and spiritual journey, separating the ritual practitioners from the rest of the community below and bringing them closer to the heavens. The structure itself may have functioned as a massive astronomical observatory. Some researchers propose that its orientation and the alignment of certain features could have been used to track the movements of the sun and moon, marking solstices or equinoxes and tying the rituals performed atop it to the eternal cycles of the cosmos. It could have been all these things at once: a temple, an observatory, and a towering symbol of a chief's power to commune with the gods. What we see today is actually the final phase of a long and complex history. The Great Pyramid we call Monte Ducati was built atop an older, smaller shrine from 1,000 years prior, a red temple coated in ochre. This earlier structure was itself a place of deep significance, and the decision to massively enlarge it centuries later speaks to the enduring power of the location in the collective memory of the people. The entire site is surrounded by a ritual landscape of menhirs or standing stones and a large carved spherical stone that may have represented a deity or a celestial body. The true purpose of Monte Ducati remains one of Sardinia's greatest enigmas. Unlike the collective tombs of France or the domestic villages of Scotland, this feels like a command center for a powerful, centralized authority, a priest-king or a shamanic elite who wielded both spiritual and political power. It stands alone in the European Neolithic, a breathtaking, monumental anomaly that challenges our maps of ancient innovation and whispers of connections and ideas flowing across the ancient world in ways we are only beginning to glimpse. Yet, even as the ancient builders of Monte Ducati were raising their enigmatic pyramid to the Sardinian sky, an even more colossal project was taking shape over 1,000 miles to the north on the rugged Breton coast of France. Here, jutting out into the Atlantic like a stone fist, lies the cairn of Barnenes. Built in stages beginning around 4,800 BCE, this is not merely a tomb. It is a veritable mountain of memory, a sprawling megalithic complex that holds the formidable title of one of the oldest large-scale man-made structures on Earth. To stand before it is to be overwhelmed by its sheer physical presence, a massive, elongated mound stretching over 70 meters in length, towering more than 8 meters high, and composed of an estimated 13,000 tons of stone. This is architecture on a breathtaking, almost brutal scale, a permanent and undeniable claim on the landscape by a people determined to honor their dead for all eternity. What makes Barnenes so architecturally significant is that it is not one cairn but two, built one in front of the other over centuries like a geological Russian doll. The first phase, a smaller crescent-shaped cairn, was constructed around 4,800 BCE. A few centuries later, a new wave of builders arrived and made a momentous decision. Instead of starting fresh, they chose to completely encapsulate the older monument, enlarging it and extending it seaward to create the gargantuan structure we see today. This act of enveloping the old with the new speaks to a deep reverence for the site itself, suggesting the location held a sacred significance that compelled later generations to build upon it rather than abandon it. The entire cairn is a patchwork of different stone types: dolerite for the darker, structural elements and granite for the lighter, finer work. A deliberate aesthetic choice that gives the mound a striking, two-toned appearance and demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the materials available to them. Within this great stone mountain lies its true marvel, a labyrinth of death. The cairn contains not one or two, but 11 separate burial chambers, each one accessible through its own distinct entrance passage. These are not rough holes in the ground, they are masterclasses in Neolithic dry stone engineering. To enter one, you must stoop and walk down a low, narrow corridor lined with massive orthostats before emerging into the central chamber. The method used to roof these chambers is one of humanity's earliest and most brilliant architectural innovations, corbelling. This technique involves layering flat stones in concentric circles, with each course jutting slightly inward over the one below. Layer by patient layer, the space narrows until it is finally closed with a single capstone at the top. The result is a soaring, beehive-shaped vault that is completely self-supporting, needing no mortar or wooden beams, and has remained steadfastly waterproof for nearly 7,000 years. The skill required to execute this, to balance the immense weight and pressure of the stones to create a stable, enclosed space, is a testament to the extraordinary engineering prowess of these early builders. Each chamber was a secure, eternal house for the bones of the ancestors, a physical manifestation of the belief that the dead remained an active part of the community. For millennia, the cairn of Barnenes slumbered beneath a thick blanket of grass and earth, its true form hidden from view, known to locals simply as a large, oddly regular hill. Its modern story, however, is a dramatic tale of near destruction and last-minute salvation that began in the 1950s. A local entrepreneur, seeing the large hill as nothing more than a convenient quarry, secured permission to break it up for road fill. His workmen and their mechanical diggers began tearing into the ancient mound, ruthlessly pulling down the dry stone walls and shattering the millennia-old capstones to extract the rubble beneath. It was an act of catastrophic vandalism that obliterated a significant portion of the prehistoric monument before anyone understood its true value. But in this moment of crisis came the spark of redemption. As the digging progressed, the outlines of the hidden chambers and their intricate stonework were suddenly exposed to the light for the first time in ages. The destruction was so extensive that it became impossible to ignore the fact that this was not a natural hill, but a man-made structure of immense antiquity and importance. The alarm was raised by local archaeologists and horrified citizens. Their protests grew so loud and forceful that they eventually reached the highest levels of the French government. In a landmark decision for cultural preservation, the state intervened and expropriated the land, putting an immediate and permanent stop to the quarrying in 1955. The very act that had threatened to erase the cairn from existence had instead revealed its secrets and ultimately guaranteed its survival. What followed was a meticulous, decades-long archaeological excavation and restoration project, a painstaking effort to undo the damage and stabilize the cairn for future generations. The cairn of Barnenes thus stands today as a dual symbol, an awe-inspiring relic of Neolithic belief and engineering, and a powerful reminder of the fragility of our shared heritage and the constant vigilance required to protect it from the unthinking forces of progress. Leaving the dramatic coastal cairn of Barnenes behind, we travel inland to the peaceful French countryside of Poitou-Charentes, where another staggering Neolithic necropolis reveals a society pushing the boundaries of stone and earth to their absolute limits. This is the tumulus of Baugon, a cemetery complex that was in use for over 1,000 years, beginning around 4,700 BCE. Unlike a single tomb, Baugon is a sprawling landscape of death, a collection of 6 distinct burial mounds, each one a chapter in an evolving architectural story. What makes this site so extraordinary is that we can literally see the learning curve of these early farmers etched into the earth, watching as their techniques grew more daring and sophisticated with each passing generation. This was not a static culture, it was a society of innovators constantly refining their craft to build more impressive and enduring monuments for their ancestors. The earliest mounds at Baugon, known as Tumulus F and C, are remarkable in their own right, demonstrating a mastery of dry stone walling and corbelling techniques to create secure burial chambers. But it is the later tumulus that truly steals the breath away, representing a quantum leap in both ambition and engineering prowess. The centerpiece of this mound is a single, monumental burial chamber. To construct it, the builders first dug a deep, rectangular pit into the ground. They then lined this pit with immense upright stone slabs or orthostats, creating the walls of the chamber. But the true show of force was reserved for the roof. Instead of using the corbelling technique of overlapping stones, they opted for a solution of breathtaking simplicity and immense power. They procured a single, colossal capstone. This was not just a large rock. It is a staggering, flat slab of limestone measuring over 7.5 meters long and weighing an estimated 90 tons. The logistics of moving this behemoth are almost beyond comprehension. Imagine a stone slab heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck. This society had no wheels, no pulleys, no draft animals. The only tools at their disposal were wooden rollers, levers, ropes made from plant fibers, and immense coordinated human labor. Moving this capstone from its quarry to the site would have required the concerted effort of hundreds of people working in perfect harmony for weeks, if not months. They would have had to build and maintain a smooth track of logs, constantly repositioning them as the stone inched forward. Levering it into position over the open chamber would have been the most perilous moment of all, a delicate ballet of physics and brute force where a single mistake could have been catastrophic. The successful placement of this 90-ton roof was one of the most spectacular engineering achievements of the European Neolithic, a definitive statement that these people were not primitive Stone Age farmers. They were master architects capable of mobilizing their entire community to execute a vision of staggering scale. Within these chambers, archaeology has provided a poignant and intimate window into the people who built them. The remains of over 200 individuals were found across the 6 mounds, their bones telling a story of a complex, multi-stage burial process that unfolded over centuries. Just as at West Kennet, the bones were disarticulated and carefully sorted, clear evidence of excarnation and secondary burial. The chambers were not sealed tombs for single dignitaries. They were active, communal ossuaries visited and curated by the living. In one particularly touching discovery, archaeologists found the skeleton of a young woman who had been placed in a fetal position, and nestled beside her was the body of a newborn child. This intimate burial, set apart from the commingled bones of the collective, suggests that even within a society that emphasized the community of ancestors, there was still room for profound personal grief and the desire to keep a mother and child together for eternity. The true genius of Baugon, however, lies in its 6-mound timeline. By studying the different tumuli, we can trace the evolution of their techniques. They began with simpler dolmens and small cairns. Then they experimented with different mound shapes and internal chamber designs. Finally, they arrived at the monumental achievement of Tumulus A, applying all their accumulated knowledge to create their magnum opus. This was a culture that learned by doing, that passed down knowledge through generations of builders, each one standing on the shoulders of the last. The tumulus of Baugon is more than a cemetery. It is a 5,000-year-old textbook on megalithic engineering, its pages written in stone and earth, waiting for us to read the incredible story of its creation. Crossing the sea from the continental tombs of France, our journey brings us to the dramatic and windswept coastline of Pembrokeshire in Wales. Here, perched on a gentle hillside with breathtaking views of the Preseli Hills, the very mountains that gave birth to the bluestones of Stonehenge, stands one of the most visually perfect and iconic megalithic monuments in all of Britain, Penta Ifan. Constructed around 3500 BCE, this is not an enclosed cairn or a hidden passage grave, but a classic dolmen, a portal tomb whose stark, elegant form has become a powerful symbol of Neolithic Wales. Its beauty lies in its simplicity and its almost impossible architecture, an arrangement of stone that has captivated visitors for centuries and continues to inspire a sense of profound wonder. The most immediate and awe-inspiring feature of Penta Ifan is its colossal capstone. This is a massive, sloping slab of local volcanic rock that measures over 5 meters long and weighs an estimated 16 tons. It rests at a seemingly impossible angle, balanced with breathtaking precision on the razor-thin tips of 3 towering upright stones. The visual effect is nothing short of magical. From most angles, the huge capstone appears to float weightlessly in the air, defying gravity and the millennia that have passed since it was set in place. This delicate balance is a testament to the incredible skill of its builders. They understood geometry, leverage, and the precise placement of pressure points to create a structure that is both monumentally powerful and astonishingly graceful. It is important to remember that what we see today is only the skeleton of the original monument. In its prime, this towering frame would have been completely covered by a large, circular mound of earth and smaller stones. The great capstone would have formed the roof of a burial chamber hidden deep within the heart of the cairn, with the uprights acting as its doorposts. The mound itself has long since been eroded away by centuries of weather and agriculture, leaving behind this stark and beautiful stone skeleton that we see today. The choice of location was clearly no accident. The tomb is situated on a hillside that commands magnificent views in every direction. To the north, the slope falls away towards the sea, while to the east, the summit of the Preseli Hills dominates the horizon. This was a highly visible landmark, a permanent statement etched into the landscape. It proclaimed a powerful connection between the people buried within and the land they had inhabited in life. By placing their most prominent ancestors in such a commanding position, the community was making a permanent territorial claim, ensuring that their presence would be felt by anyone who passed through the valley for generations to come. The tomb connected them to the earth beneath and the sky above, a fixed point in both the physical and spiritual geography of the region. For a long time, the history of Penta Ifan was a matter of speculation and legend, much like Wayland's smithy. That changed in the late 19th century with the first archaeological excavations led by Welsh antiquarians. When they carefully dug beneath the great capstone, they made the discoveries that confirmed the monument's true purpose. In the chamber floor, they uncovered fragments of finely decorated pottery, the kind associated with religious offerings or funerary rites. More significantly, they found the cremated remains of several individuals. These were not complete skeletons, but small collections of burned bone, likely representing selective burials of important community members. These finds were crucial, transforming the site from a mysterious stone arrangement into a confirmed tomb, a sacred house for the dead. The evidence suggests it was used for collective burial over many generations, with the remains being placed inside the chamber before the entire structure was finally sealed beneath its great earthen mound. Today, Penta Ifan stands as an open monument, a place of quiet power and immense beauty. To walk around it is to appreciate the sheer scale of the stones and the audacity of the people who put them here. The peaceful setting, with grazing sheep and the ever-present Welsh wind, adds to its timeless aura. It feels both ancient and immediate, a direct connection to a people who 5,500 years ago possessed the vision, the skill, and the collective will to create something meant to last forever. It is a masterpiece of minimalist design, where the immense weight of stone is transformed into an image of effortless grace, a permanent memorial to the ancestors that continues to float, serene and majestic, above the Welsh landscape. Now, leaving behind the iconic silhouette of Penta Ifan, our journey takes us across the sea to a place where Neolithic artistry reached its absolute zenith. We are traveling to a small, uninhabited island in the Gulf of Morbihan on the southern coast of Brittany, France. This is Gavrinis, and while its name may not be as widely known as Stonehenge, it houses a secret that makes it one of the most important megalithic sites in the world. Built around 3,500 BCE, the monument itself is a classic passage tomb, similar in basic design to Newgrange. But to step inside Gavrinis is to enter something entirely unique. It is not merely a tomb, but the most spectacular art gallery of the European Stone Age, a cathedral whose walls are covered in a dense, breathtaking tapestry of carved symbols that may represent humanity's oldest surviving attempt to illustrate the creation of the universe. The approach to the island by boat sets the stage for a truly special experience. As you near the shore, the only structure visible is a large, grassy mound, serene and unassuming against the skyline. It gives no hint of the treasure concealed within. The tomb was constructed at a time when sea levels were lower, and the island was likely connected to the mainland, making it an accessible and highly visible part of the ritual landscape. The mound itself is impressive, but the true wonder lies beyond the simple entrance stone. To enter, you must stoop low and walk down a long, narrow passage that stretches nearly 14 meters into the heart of the mound. The air grows cool and still, and with each step you are moving away from the modern world and into a space that feels profoundly sacred and ancient. The passage opens into a single, small burial chamber, a simple, almost intimate space, but it is the journey to that chamber that is utterly transformative. For along the entire length of the passage and within the chamber itself, the massive orthostat slabs that form the walls are not blank. They are a riot of intricate, deeply carved art. Of the 29 large stones that line the passage and chamber, a staggering 23 are covered from top to bottom in elaborate designs. The density of the carving is almost overwhelming. There is not a single inch of these stones that has been left untouched. The artists used stone tools to peck and grind the designs into the hard granite surface, a painstaking process that would have taken countless hours of dedicated labor. The most prevalent motif is the spiral, swirling in endless hypnotic variations: single spirals, double spirals, concentric spirals that seem to draw the eye into a vortex. But there are many other symbols: zigzags that could represent water or lightning, concentric arcs, and perhaps most intriguingly, shapes that look like stylized axes or crooks, symbols of power and authority. For over a century, scholars viewed these carvings as abstract decorations, a kind of art for art's sake. But a revolutionary discovery in the 1980s changed everything. A researcher named Serge Casson was studying a large broken capstone that lay near the nearby Table des Marchand dolmen. He realized that the carved patterns on this capstone perfectly matched the designs on a stone inside the Gavrini's tomb. It was as if a single, giant stone had been deliberately broken into pieces and used in different monuments. When they digitally superimposed the two designs, an astonishing image emerged. The complete original stone was carved with a massive, central depiction of a horned bull, with the more familiar spirals and patterns forming a kind of background. This proved that the art was not random abstraction. It was symbolic, narrative, and possibly told a story. The horned bull was a powerful symbol of strength and fertility across the Neolithic world. The act of breaking this symbolic stone and distributing its parts to different tombs might have been a way to create a spiritual link between sacred sites, or to tell a fragmented story that could only be understood by those initiated into its meaning. This discovery fuels the compelling theory that the entire interior of Gavrini's is not just decorated, but is in fact a single, coherent cosmological map. Some researchers propose that the dense, swirling patterns represent a Neolithic creation myth. The long, dark passage could symbolize a journey back in time, into a primordial chaos before the world was formed. The spirals might depict this swirling energy of creation. As you move deeper, the patterns could be illustrating the emergence of the sun, the moon, the seasons, and the fundamental forces of nature. The horned bull, a symbol of ultimate power and life, might represent a creator deity or the vital force that animates the world. The tomb then becomes far more than a resting place for the dead. It is a three-dimensional storybook, a physical representation of the community's beliefs about how the universe began and how the spirits of the deceased were reborn into this cosmic cycle. The act of walking the passage would have been a ritual reenactment of this creation story, a deeply immersive spiritual experience designed to connect the living and the dead with the eternal order of the cosmos. The sheer concentration of art at Gavrinis is unparalleled. Why here? Why did this specific tomb receive such lavish attention? The island's location in the sheltered Gulf of Morbihan, an area teeming with other megalithic monuments, suggests it was a central place of pilgrimage, a spiritual capital for the region. The effort required to create this masterpiece, the quarrying of the stones, the skill of the artists, the coordination of the labor, speaks of a highly organized society with a powerful priestly class who held profound knowledge of astronomy, mythology, and ritual. These individuals were the guardians of a complex spiritual tradition, and they commissioned a monument that would encode their beliefs in an indestructible stone language. When the tomb was finally sealed, perhaps after centuries of use, this sacred knowledge was hidden from view, waiting in the darkness for millennia. Today, to stand in the passage of Gavrinis, surrounded by the ghosts of 5,000-year-old symbols, is to be in the presence of one of humanity's first and most ambitious attempts to answer the great questions of existence, using the only permanent medium they knew, the very stone of the earth. Just a short distance from the world-famous Newgrange, hidden within the same bend of the River Boyne, lies a monument of even greater complexity and artistic splendor, yet one that often dwells in the shadow of its celebrated neighbor. This is Noth, the great unsung hero of the Brú na Bóinne complex. Built around 3200 BCE, Noth is not a single tomb but a sprawling megalithic citadel, a central command post in the Neolithic landscape that reveals a level of astronomical precision and artistic obsession that is simply unparalleled. If Newgrange is the brilliant soloist known for its spectacular solstice light show, then Noth is the entire orchestra, performing a far more intricate and sustained symphony of stone, sun, and symbol over thousands of years. The most immediate feature that distinguishes Noth is its sheer, staggering scale. The site is dominated by a massive central mound, one of the largest of its kind in all of Europe, measuring nearly 95 meters in diameter and towering 15 meters high. This great mound is not an isolated monument but the heart of a vast ritual city. It is surrounded by a stunning constellation of at least 18 smaller satellite tombs, creating a necropolis that physically maps a social hierarchy onto the landscape, with the largest tomb at the center representing the ultimate authority, perhaps a lineage of chieftains or high priests. But the true genius of Noth is hidden within the great mound itself, a feature that makes it utterly unique. It possesses not one, but two separate passage graves, one opening to the east and the other to the west. This dual orientation was not an accident, it was a profound astronomical statement. The eastern passage is perfectly aligned to capture the rays of the rising sun on the spring equinox, while the western passage is precisely targeted to receive the setting sun on the autumn equinox. The builders of Noth were not just tracking a single celestial event, they were mapping the entire balance of the solar year, capturing the sun at the two moments of perfect equilibrium between day and night. This suggests a cosmology centered on balance, renewal, and the eternal cycle, with the Great Mound acting as a central pivot between the forces of light and darkness. Yet, for all its astronomical sophistication, the true soul of Noth is expressed in its art. Walking around the base of the Great Mound is an overwhelming experience, for you are surrounded by the largest collection of megalithic art in all of Western Europe. Of the 300 known decorated stones at the Brú na Bóinne site, a staggering 200 are found at Noth alone, representing a quarter of all known megalithic art on the entire continent. This is not mere decoration, it is a dense, silent language carved into the very fabric of the monument. The stones are a canvas for a mesmerizing vocabulary of symbols, spirals that swirl like galaxies, concentric circles that mimic the sun and moon, serpentine forms that ripple across the surface, and mysterious diamond-shaped lozenges. The most famous stone, the magnificent entrance stone to the Western Passage, is a masterpiece of symbolic complexity, covered in a dense tapestry of these symbols that seems to tell a story we can no longer decipher. The art is not randomly placed, it is concentrated at the entrances to the passages and within the chambers themselves, the most sacred thresholds. This suggests the carvings were not just for the living to see, but perhaps served as a form of spiritual protection, a symbolic map for the dead to navigate the afterlife, or a permanent record of the community's cosmic beliefs. The story of Noth is not just one of its construction, but of its incredibly long and varied life. This was not a tomb used for a few generations and then abandoned. Evidence shows that Noth was a place of continuous ritual activity and settlement for over 2,000 years, from its founding in the Neolithic era right through the Bronze Age and into the early centuries of Irish Christianity. The mound became a focal point for later communities. In the early medieval period, it was chosen as the seat of power for the kings of northern Brega, who built a fortified ring fort on its summit. The ancient tomb, once a house for the dead, was now the foundation for a fortress of the living, its enduring presence in the landscape lending legitimacy and a sense of deep history to new rulers. This incredibly long biography makes Noth more than an archaeological site. It is a physical embodiment of Irish history, a place where the layers of time, pagan, royal, and Christian, are literally stacked one on top of the other, each generation finding its own reason to be drawn to this powerful, ancient place. Yet while Noth dazzles with its astronomical complexity and artistic abundance, the third great sister of the Brú na Bóinne, Dowth, offers a different kind of magic. Built around the same time, 3200 BCE, Dowth possesses a quieter, more enigmatic energy. Its great mound is similar in size to its neighbors, but its story is one of layered history, where ancient mystery intertwines with a much later chapter of Irish life, creating a site that feels simultaneously profound and deeply lived in. If Newgrange is the celestial marvel and Noth is the artistic hub, then Dowth is the wise elder, its secrets partially obscured by time yet pulsing with an undeniable earthy power. The heart of Dowth's ancient purpose lies in its two passage tombs, which tell a tale of two different burial traditions. The more impressive of the two, known as Dowth North, features an exceptionally long passage that stretches for over 18 meters into the side of the mound. Walking this passage is a truly immersive experience. It is low and dark, forcing you to stoop as you journey deeper into the earth, each step taking you further from the modern world. The passage culminates in a cruciform chamber, much like the one at Newgrange, with three side recesses designed to hold the cremated remains of the dead. But Dowth has its own unique celestial alignment, one that is both subtler and perhaps more poignant than the dramatic solstice event at Newgrange. The tomb is aligned to the setting sun around the time of the winter solstice. In the deep midwinter, as the sun sinks low in the sky, its last weak rays manage to creep down the long passageway, illuminating the inner chamber with a soft, fading, golden light. This is not the triumphant burst of sunrise that fills Newgrange. It is a gentler, more somber event, a farewell of the sun on the shortest day of the year, perhaps symbolizing the peaceful setting of a life rather than its dramatic rebirth. The second tomb, Dowth South, is smaller and simpler, but its entrance is guarded by one of the most magnificent carved stones in the entire Boyne Valley. This stone is a canvas of dense, intricate spirals and radiating sun symbols, artistry that rivals anything found at Noth. What makes Dowth South particularly fascinating, however, is its architectural form. Unlike the classic cruciform design of its neighbor, this tomb has a more unusual, almost cloverleaf-shaped chamber. This variation suggests that Dowth may have been built by a slightly different community or a different faction within the same broad culture, one with its own distinct architectural preferences and ritual practices. The presence of two such different tombs within the same mound hints at a complex social tapestry, where different groups or families shared the same sacred space but maintained their own unique identities in death. The most captivating aspect of Dowth, however, is the way its story stretches far beyond the Neolithic era. In the 9th century CE, over 4,000 years after the tomb was built, the site was chosen by early Christian monks as the location for a new settlement. They did not see the Great Mound as a pagan relic to be destroyed, but rather as a natural, powerful feature of the landscape to be incorporated into their own world. They built a circular enclosure known as a ring fort on and around the summit of the ancient mound. More remarkably, they constructed a souterrain, an underground passage or cellar used for storage and refuge, by partially digging into the side of the Neolithic mound itself. In doing so, they unintentionally broke into the ancient passage of Dowth South. We know this because the medieval rubble that filled their souterrain also spilled into the Stone Age tomb, sealing it and preserving it until modern archaeological excavations. This medieval activity provides a breathtaking continuity. It shows that the significance of Dowth was never truly lost. For the monks, the mound was simply Ferti Tuil, the mound of the sin, but its imposing presence commanded respect and practical use. Their decision to build a settlement here, to literally root their community in the fabric of the ancient monument, demonstrates how these places retained a powerful, numinous quality that transcended changes in religion and culture. Dowth is not a time capsule frozen in the Stone Age. It is a palimpsest where the writings of one era are layered over those of another, creating a rich document of continuous human engagement with a sacred landscape. To stand at Dowth is to feel the presence of not just the tomb builders, but also the early Christian farmers, all drawn to the same powerful place for millennia, each leaving their own distinct mark on a site that has always been a focal point of life, death, and memory. Leaving the dense constellation of tombs in the Boyne Valley, our journey now takes us northwest into the heart of Ireland to the rolling hills of County Meath. Here, crowning a series of summits known as Sliab nach Cayley, or the Hills of the Witch, lies the ancient cemetery of Loughcrew. Dating to around 3,300 BCE, these are among the most dramatically situated passage tombs in all of Europe. To reach them is to undertake a pilgrimage, climbing steep slopes until you stand on a hilltop with a breathtaking 360-degree view of the Irish countryside. From this vantage point, you can see for miles in every direction, a sea of green fields and smaller hills stretching to the horizon. The placement was no accident. It was a deliberate statement of connection, a way to physically and spiritually link the world of the living below with the realm of the ancestors above, and to connect their sacred space with the vast, overarching dome of the sky. The most significant of these cairns is known as Cairn T on Carnbane East, the highest point of the range. From the outside, it appears as a large, circular mound of white quartz stones that gleam in the sunlight, but its true wonder is hidden within. The entrance is a simple, low opening that leads into a short but precisely oriented passage. This passage does not aim randomly. It is aligned directly to the east, waiting for the sun on the mornings of the spring and autumn equinoxes. For a few precious minutes as the sun crests the horizon on these 2 days of perfect balance, a narrow beam of light travels down the dark passageway and strikes the magnificent backstone of the central chamber. This is not a gentle wash of light. It is a deliberate, focused illumination that dances across the stone's surface, highlighting a stunning array of ancient carvings. For the Neolithic farmers who built this, it was a moment of profound cosmic confirmation. The sun, in its eternal cycle, was entering the house of the dead, bringing light and warmth to the ancestors and symbolically guaranteeing the rebirth of the land and the continuation of the seasons. It was a built-in promise of renewal engineered into the very fabric of the tomb. The stone that receives this celestial spotlight is one of the most important pieces of prehistoric art in Ireland. It is a vast canvas of pecked and carved symbols, a dense tapestry of spirals, circles, zigzags, and radiating lines. Among this intricate web, one particular set of carvings has captivated researchers and sparked a compelling theory. There is a series of concentric circles and arcs that, when viewed as a whole, appears to create a distinct face-like pattern. Some archaeologists, most notably the late Martin Brennan, have proposed that this is not an abstract design but a deliberate representation, a schematic image of the full moon, complete with its characteristic Maria, the dark patches we often call the man in the moon. If this interpretation is correct, the Loughcrew Backstone may contain the oldest known cartographic depiction of the moon in human history. This would suggest an astonishing level of celestial observation, where the builders were not only tracking the sun's path with precision, but were also mapping the features of the moon, integrating its cycles into their complex cosmological understanding. The equinox sun would then be illuminating a portrait of the moon, a symbolic marriage of the two great luminaries in the sky within the darkness of the earth. Tragically, the full story of Loughcrew is one of both awe and profound loss. The modern exploration of the site is inextricably linked to a man named Eugene Conwell, whose work in the 1860s and 70s is a classic, heartbreaking tale of well-intentioned but destructive early archaeology. Conwell was fascinated by the cairns and dedicated years to exploring them. His enthusiasm, however, was not matched by the meticulous techniques we expect today. In his quest to discover the central chambers, he and his team employed a method that makes modern archaeologists shudder. They used gunpowder to blast their way into several of the cairns. This brutal approach shattered ancient stones, scattered priceless archaeological context, and irrevocably destroyed tombs that had stood intact for nearly 5,000 years. While Conwell did document his finds, including cremated remains and artifacts, the knowledge lost in the explosions is incalculable. We will never know the original arrangement of the stones, the full extent of the art, or the precise burial rituals that took place within those now shattered chambers. His actions stand as a somber reminder of a time when curiosity often outpaced preservation, and the rush to discover the past sometimes resulted in its irreversible destruction. The surviving cairns, like Cairn T, are therefore precious survivors, their silent stones holding secrets that we can only partially decipher, a legacy of both ancient genius and modern recklessness. Our journey through ancient Ireland now brings us to a place that offers a contrasting vision to the majestic, centralized tombs of the Boyne Valley. Just a few miles west of the modern town of Sligo, scattered across a gentle limestone plateau, lies the Carrowmore Megalithic Cemetery. This is not a landscape dominated by a single towering cairn, but something far more expansive and, in its own way, equally profound. With over 30 surviving monuments and evidence of perhaps 60 originally, Carrowmore is the largest and one of the oldest collections of megalithic tombs in all of Ireland. The dates here are staggering, with the earliest activity beginning around 4,300 BCE, making these simple stone circles centuries older than the great mounds at Newgrange and Knowth. Walking among them feels like stepping into the very dawn of Ireland's Neolithic period, a time when the first farmers were just beginning to imprint their beliefs and their dead upon this new land. The tombs themselves possess a humble, elegant beauty. The most common type is the boulder circle or simple portal tomb. Picture a low, circular platform defined by a ring of large, unshaped gneiss boulders. In the center of this circle, a small, rectangular burial chamber was constructed from a few upright stones supporting a single, modest capstone. This design is far simpler than the long, dark passages and corbelled chambers of later times. There are no grand entrance stones covered in spiral art, no massive mounds of earth and quartz. The focus was on the circle itself and the simple, secure chamber at its heart. This minimalist architecture speaks of a society that was still establishing itself, yet was already deeply committed to creating permanent, sacred spaces for their ancestors. The sheer number of these tombs, all clustered so closely together, suggests that Carrowmore was a regional cemetery of immense importance, a place where different family groups or clans from across a wide area came to bury their dead for nearly a millennium, creating a vast city of the ancestors under the open sky. What truly sets Carrowmore apart, however, is its breathtaking integration with the natural landscape. The tombs are not randomly placed. Their positions and orientations reveal a sophisticated understanding of the world around them, a deliberate effort to connect the realm of the dead with the most powerful features of the living world. The entire cemetery is arranged in a wide arc, and nearly every tomb is strategically aligned to frame a specific, dramatic view. To the north, the tombs look towards the distinctive flat-topped mountain of Benbulben. To the south, their sightlines are drawn to the peak of Necnaria, which is crowned by the massive, unexcavated cairn of Queen Maeve, a later Neolithic monument that seems to stand as a sentinel watching over the older cemetery below. These were not just pretty views, they were sacred alignments. The mountains themselves were likely seen as powerful, spiritual entities, the homes of gods or ancestors. By orienting their tombs towards these eternal landmarks, the builders were forging a permanent connection between the spirits of their departed and the enduring, unmovable bones of the earth. The tombs acted as focal points, drawing the power of the landscape into the burial ritual and anchoring the community's identity to the very shape of their territory. Within these simple stone chambers, archaeologists have uncovered a poignant and intimate record of Ireland's first farming communities. The human remains, though fragmentary after thousands of years, tell a vivid story. The tombs were used for collective burial, with the cremated and sometimes unburned bones of multiple individuals being placed together inside the central cist. Analysis of these bones reveals a population that was physically robust but lived challenging lives. They were generally shorter than modern people, with skeletons showing signs of arthritis and spinal stress, the telltale marks of a life spent in hard, manual labor clearing forests, tilling soil, and building stone walls. Their dental health was poor, with worn teeth and evidence of abscesses, likely caused by a coarse diet that included grit from stone-ground grain. This diet, however, was also the key to their success. Chemical analysis of the bones confirms that these people were indeed farmers. They had transitioned from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one based on agriculture, cultivating cereals like wheat and barley, and raising domesticated animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats. But they had not entirely abandoned the old ways. The evidence also shows they supplemented their diet with wild resources: fish from the nearby sea, shellfish from the coast, and wild game from the surrounding woods. They were pragmatic and adaptable, creating a mixed economy that allowed them to thrive. The very act of building Carrowmore, of dedicating this large tract of good farmland to the dead, is a powerful statement of their confidence. They were here to stay. They had claimed this land not just for themselves, but for all their generations to come, and this cemetery was the ultimate proof of their permanent connection to the soil of Ireland. But for a true sense of the scale achievable by these early engineers, we must journey to the lush, green countryside of County Carlow. Here, standing in a peaceful field, is a monument that takes the concept of the portal tomb to its absolute, breathtaking extreme. This is the Brownshill Dolmen, a structure whose defining feature is so immense, so overwhelmingly massive, that it challenges our understanding of what was possible in the Stone Age. Built around 3300 BCE, this Irish tomb is home to a capstone of almost mythical proportions, a single slab of granite that weighs an estimated 100 tons. To put that staggering figure into perspective, that is heavier than a fully loaded blue whale or nearly 30 modern family cars. It is, without question, the largest capstone of its kind in all of Europe, a monument that speaks not in whispers, but in a deafening roar of pure, uncompromising power. The engineering challenge represented by this one stone is almost incomprehensible. The society that built this had no metal tools to shape the granite, no wheels to transport it, and no pulleys or cranes to lift it. The only resources available were human muscle, wooden levers, ropes made from organic materials, and a profound understanding of physics. The quarry for this colossal stone was likely several kilometers away. Moving it would have required an immense, coordinated community effort. Hundreds of people would have had to work in unison, likely using a system of wooden rollers made from tree trunks. They would have laid down a track, painstakingly inching the stone forward by constantly repositioning the rollers from the back to the front, a process that could have taken weeks or even months. The most perilous moment, however, was the lift. To raise this 100-ton behemoth onto the tips of its supporting upright stones would have been a feat of precision and brute force. The most plausible theory involves building an earthen ramp next to the uprights. The capstone would then be dragged up this ramp and carefully levered into position over the chamber. Once it was perfectly balanced, the ramp would be dug away, leaving the capstone resting triumphantly in place. The successful execution of this plan represents one of the most spectacular logistical achievements of the Neolithic world. What we see today at Browns Hill is like Penta Ifan, the magnificent skeleton of the original monument. The great capstone now rests on two supporting stones, though archaeologists believe a third upright may have collapsed or been removed over the millennia. The massive mound of earth that would have entirely covered this stone framework has long since eroded away, leaving the colossal capstone exposed to the sky. This exposure, however, only amplifies its awe-inspiring presence. It looms over the landscape, a stark and permanent reminder of the people who put it there. The tomb's location on a low hill, now known as Browns Hill, was strategically chosen to make it a highly visible landmark, a permanent territorial marker that declared the power and permanence of the community who built it. In its completed form, with the capstone hidden within a large conical cairn, it would have been an imposing and sacred hill in its own right, a man-made mountain for the ancestors. Faced with such a staggering construction, it is no wonder that later cultures, who had lost the knowledge of its original purpose, sought to explain it through myth and legend. In the centuries that followed the Neolithic era, folk traditions grew around the dolmen. It became known as a giant's grave. The local stories said that only a race of immense superhuman beings could have lifted such a stone. These tales often featured ancient heroes or mythological figures like the mighty Finn McCool, who were said to have hurled the massive stones across the landscape as if they were pebbles. This association with giants is a common theme found at megalithic sites across Europe. It was a way for people to make sense of the impossible, to rationalize the existence of structures that seemed to defy the capabilities of ordinary humans. The folkloric name, Browns Hill, itself is a relatively recent addition, derived from a local family who farmed the land in the 18th century, further layering the site's long history. The true purpose of the chamber beneath this great stone remains partly shrouded in mystery. Unlike many other portal tombs, Browns Hill has never been fully archaeologically excavated. This is both a frustration and a blessing. It means we lack the detailed evidence of burial practices that sites like Paulnabron have provided, but it also means the tomb remains undisturbed, its secrets intact for future generations to explore with more advanced, less invasive techniques. We can assume, based on clear parallels with other portal tombs, that it served as a collective burial site for the community's most important members. The chamber would have held the cremated or carefully cleaned bones of the dead, placed there over many generations. The immense effort invested in the capstone signifies that the individuals interred within were of paramount importance, their resting place designed to be an eternal and unchallengeable testament to their status and their lineage's claim to the land. The Browns Hill Dolmen, therefore, stands as a dual monument, an awe-inspiring feat of Neolithic engineering that pushes the very limits of prehistoric capability. and a timeless canvas upon which human imagination has painted stories of giants and heroes, forever trying to grasp the magnitude of the achievement it represents. But to truly understand the significance of these grand tombs, we must also listen to the stories told by the smallest of their remains. For that, we journey to one of Ireland's most hauntingly beautiful and starkly dramatic landscapes, the Burren in County Clare. Here, in a vast limestone pavement where the rock is fractured into countless fissures known as grikes, the Paulnabrone dolmen stands as an iconic silhouette against the sky. Built around 3600 BCE, this portal tomb is perhaps the most photographed megalithic monument in all of Ireland. Its image is one of elegant simplicity, a massive, angled capstone perched precariously, it seems, on two slender portal stones, creating a stone table that has endured for over 5,600 years. For centuries, it was seen as a beautiful mystery, a lonely monument in a barren land, its purpose guessed at but not truly known. That all changed in the 1980s when a crack was discovered in one of the supporting stones, prompting a full archaeological excavation. What was revealed was not just a tomb, but a time capsule containing intimate details of the very people who built it. The excavation, led by archaeologist Anne Lynch, transformed Paulnabrone from a monument into a narrative. When the chamber beneath the great capstone was carefully opened, it yielded the remains of at least 22 individuals, but these were not complete skeletons laid to rest. The bones were disarticulated and jumbled together, a clear sign of the complex Neolithic funerary practices we've seen elsewhere. The bodies had been allowed to decompose elsewhere, likely on exposed platforms, before the cleaned bones were gathered and brought to the dolmen for final burial. This was a collective tomb used over a period of perhaps 600 years, where the individual was absorbed into the community of ancestors. The remains represented both adults and children, men and women, suggesting this was the resting place for a cross-section of the local clan or family group. But the bones held even deeper secrets. Analysis revealed a hard life etched into their very structure. The adult bones showed signs of advanced osteoarthritis, particularly in the joints of the spine and knees, the result of a lifetime of arduous physical labor, carrying heavy loads, grinding grain, and traversing the rugged limestone terrain. One man had suffered a serious wound from a sharp weapon, though it had healed, indicating that violence was a part of their world. The children's teeth showed evidence of periodic malnutrition or illness, with distinct lines in the enamel marking times of severe physical stress during their early years. This was not a romanticized past, it was a story of resilience in the face of constant challenge. Yet, alongside this evidence of a difficult existence were the grave goods, precious items buried with the dead that speak to their beliefs and their connections. The excavations uncovered a small but significant collection of artifacts within the tomb chamber. There were shards of finely decorated pottery, likely containing offerings of food or drink for the journey to the afterlife. There were stone tools, scrapers and arrowheads crafted from chert, a material not native to the Burren which had to be traded for or brought from distant areas. This tells us that these people were not isolated. They were part of a wider network of exchange and communication. Perhaps the most poignant finds were the personal ornaments. A polished stone pendant and 2 stone beads were discovered among the bones. These were not utilitarian objects, they were items of adornment, of personal identity, and perhaps even status. To bury such valued possessions with the dead suggests a powerful belief in an afterlife where such things would be needed, or a desire to honor the deceased by sending their cherished belongings with them into the next world. The location of Paulnabrone itself is a key part of its story. The Burren is a unique geological formation, a karst landscape where very little soil covers the limestone pavement. In the spring and summer, however, this apparently barren rock erupts into a spectacular display of Arctic and Mediterranean flowers growing side by side in the sheltered grikes. For Neolithic farmers, this would have been valuable winter pastureland, as the limestone absorbs heat and keeps the ground surprisingly free of snow. Placing their most prominent tomb right in the heart of this territory was a powerful statement. It permanently connected the community's ancestors to their economic livelihood. The dolmen would have been a highly visible landmark for anyone herding cattle across the vast limestone plain, a constant reminder that the generations who came before still watched over the land and the people who worked it. Palnabron is more than a tomb, it is a bridge. It connects the iconic image of a lonely stone table with the intimate human reality of the lives it commemorates: the arthritis, the healed wounds, the traded beads, and the children who faced hardship. It gives a name, or at least a story, to the hands that raised those stones so long ago. Tucked away in the rolling hills of County Sligo, just a stone's throw from the Atlantic coast, lies a monument that captures a fascinating moment of architectural transition in the Neolithic world. This is Crevicle, a court cairn built around 3500 BCE, and it offers a brilliant physical blueprint of how the rituals of life and death were carefully separated and yet connected by its builders. Unlike the grand, enclosed mounds of the Boyne Valley, Crevicle presents its secrets in an open, almost theatrical layout. The entire structure is shaped like a long, stone-sided trapezoid, but its most captivating feature is at its eastern end. A wide, semi-circular open space, a courtyard defined by a graceful curve of large boulders. This is the court, and it is one of the best preserved examples of its kind in all of Ireland. Walking into this court feels like entering an ancient amphitheater. This was not the final resting place of the dead, it was the space for the living. This is where the community would have gathered to perform the essential public rituals that preceded the actual burial. We can imagine ceremonies filled with chanting, storytelling, and perhaps feasting, all taking place under the open sky. The court was a stage for the social and spiritual processes of mourning and honoring, a place where the community could collectively acknowledge a death and prepare the deceased for their journey into the realm of the ancestors. It was a space of transition, both physically and symbolically, bridging the world of the living outside with the world of the dead waiting just beyond a narrow entrance. That entrance is the crucial architectural link. A small, low doorway in the center of the court's back wall acts as a dramatic threshold. To pass through it, one must stoop, making a conscious, physical act of leaving the open, public space behind. This doorway leads into a long, narrow gallery, divided by stone slabs into two or more separate chambers. This was the private, enclosed domain of the dead. The contrast is deliberate and powerful. The bright, communal court gives way to a dark, segmented, and intimate passage where the carefully sorted bones of the ancestors would have been laid to rest. The architecture itself orchestrates a profound emotional and spiritual experience, moving from public ceremony to private interment, from light to darkness, from the noise of the community to the silence of the tomb. This design shows a society that had developed a highly structured and sophisticated approach to death, creating a dedicated architectural script for the most important of human transitions. The story of Crevicle, however, does not end with its stones. When the site was excavated in the 1930s, the artifacts uncovered within the court and chambers painted a vivid picture of a community that was far from isolated. Among the expected finds of flint scrapers and polished stone axes, tools for daily life and perhaps ritual use, were fragments of pottery that sent ripples through the archaeological community. These were not the typical coarse ware of local Irish manufacture. These potsherds were identified as being from the style known as Beechara ware, a type of pottery characteristic of Neolithic communities in southwestern Scotland and northern Britain. The presence of this pottery at Crevicle is a small object with enormous implications. It is hard, physical evidence of contact across the treacherous waters of the North Channel. This suggests that nearly 5,600 years ago, the people of this part of Ireland were part of an extensive maritime network. They were trading goods, and more importantly, they were trading ideas. The sea was not a barrier, it was a highway. This connection helps explain the very architecture of the court cairn itself, a style that is found most prominently in the northern half of Ireland and has clear parallels in western Scotland. The builders of Crevicle were likely in dialogue with their cousins across the water, sharing not only pottery but also architectural concepts and perhaps even religious beliefs. The tomb stands not just as a monument to the dead, but as a testament to the curiosity and connectedness of these early farming communities, whose horizons stretched far beyond their immediate shoreline. Now, our journey takes us to a landscape where order and mystery intertwine in a truly unique configuration. We arrive in the heart of County Tyrone in Northern Ireland, to a windswept stretch of peatland known as Beagmore. Here, nestled against the backdrop of the Sperrin Mountains, lies not a single monument, but an entire complex of stone circles and cairns that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Dating to around 2900 to 2600 BCE, Beagmore consists of 7 distinct stone circles, along with a dozen ancient cairns and a number of mysterious stone rows. But it is the specific arrangement of these circles that sets this site apart from any other. Instead of standing alone, the circles are arranged in curious pairs, with several of the couplings linked by a shared, low stone avenue. This deliberate pairing is a feature not seen elsewhere in the British Isles, suggesting that the people who built Beagmore were following a very specific and sophisticated ritual blueprint. The stones themselves are not the towering monoliths of larger, more famous sites. They are relatively low, with many now barely peeking above the surrounding heather and peat. Yet their careful placement reveals a deep connection to the cosmos. The entire complex is precisely aligned to a key celestial event, the rising of the sun on the summer solstice. On the longest day of the year, the sun would have risen directly over a prominent notch in the distant Sperrin Mountains, casting its first rays along the avenues that connect the paired circles. This precise alignment was no happy accident. It was the result of generations of careful observation, a testament to the builders' desire to anchor their rituals to the most powerful cyclical events in the natural world. The pairing of the circles might even reflect a deeper cosmological duality, a symbolic representation of the union of sun and moon, male and female, or the balancing of opposing forces that was central to their worldview. But the story of Beagmore is layered with even deeper intrigue. Beneath the circles we see today, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of a much older past. The site is underlain by a prehistoric field system, with ancient stone walls and signs of early agriculture dating back centuries before the circles were erected. This has led to a captivating theory that Beagmore was not built on a blank slate, but on land that had already been cleared, worked, and perhaps even abandoned by an earlier community. The stones themselves tell another part of this story. Many of the smaller uprights are wildly erratic, almost random in their placement, leading to the site's local nickname, the place of the pointed stones. This has fueled speculation that Beagmore might have been constructed during a period of environmental crisis. As the climate grew wetter and the peat bogs began to expand, swallowing the once fertile fields, the people may have built these circles as a desperate plea to the gods, a ritual attempt to halt the encroaching wilderness and restore order to a world that was literally turning to mud beneath their feet. This theory transforms our understanding of the site from a purely astronomical observatory to a place of profound ceremony and perhaps even communal anxiety. The cairns scattered amongst the circles add a funerary element, linking the cycles of the sun and the seasons directly to the cycle of human life and death. Beagmore, therefore, becomes a multi-layered sacred landscape. It was a celestial clock, a temple for solstice ceremonies, a memorial to the ancestors, and possibly a monumental prayer for the fertility of the land itself. The paired circles, standing silently together on the boggy ground, represent a community's enduring effort to create harmony and meaning in a world that was both beautifully ordered in the heavens and challengingly unpredictable on Earth. Venturing far to the northwest, our journey takes us to one of the most atmospherically charged and dramatically situated sites in all of prehistoric Europe. On the Isle of Lewis in Scotland's Outer Hebrides, where the Atlantic wind whips across peat bogs and the light takes on a uniquely clear, silvery quality, stand the Callanish stones. Erected between 2900 and 2600 BCE, this is not a simple circle but a complex, cross-shaped arrangement of slender Lewisian gneiss monoliths that seems to rise organically from the wild landscape. The setting is nothing short of spectacular. The stones are positioned on a ridge overlooking the sea loch, Loch Rogue, with its labyrinthine inlets and tiny, rocky islands. On a calm day, the dark, weathered stones are perfectly reflected in the still waters below, creating a mesmerizing double image. But when the mist rolls in, shrouding the stones in a damp, swirling cloak, the place feels utterly otherworldly, a gateway to a time when the boundaries between the earthly and the spiritual were thin indeed. What makes Callanish architecturally unique is its distinct cruciform or cross-shaped plan. At its heart is a central monolith nearly 5 meters tall, standing within a circle of 13 upright stones. From this central circle, 4 avenues of standing stones radiate outwards, forming arms that align almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. To the north, a long avenue of stones runs downhill, while shorter rows extend to the east, south, and west. A large burial cairn was later built inside the circle, but it is the alignment of these stone arms that holds the key to the site's deepest mystery. While many Neolithic monuments like Stonehenge and Newgrange are famously aligned with the sun, Callanish tells a different story, a story written by the moon. The most breathtaking celestial event at Callanish occurs only once every 18.6 years, a cycle known as the lunar standstill. This is the extreme point in the moon's long, slow wobble across the sky. At the major southern lunar standstill, the full moon, at its very lowest point in the heavens, appears to skim the southern horizon. From the perspective of the stone circle, it seems to dance along the top of the hills to the south before dramatically dipping out of sight. Then, a few hours later, it re-emerges, rising again in the southeast and gliding directly down the long, southern avenue of stones, its light perfectly framed by the ancient monoliths. To witness this would have been to see the moon itself traveling down a stone pathway created by human hands, a direct and dramatic link between the celestial and the terrestrial. This rare and precise alignment suggests the builders of Callanish were not just casual sky watchers. They were meticulous astronomers who tracked the complex, long-term cycles of the moon with astonishing accuracy, building a monumental clock to mark its most extreme and powerful moments. For the communities who lived here, the moon's cycle would have been as critical as the sun's for tracking time, managing resources, and understanding their world. The lunar standstill event, occurring over a period of several years, would have been a time of immense ritual significance, drawing people from across the region to this sacred spot. They likely saw the moon's dramatic behavior as a manifestation of a powerful lunar deity or a fundamental rhythm in the order of the cosmos. The architecture of Callanish, with its avenues reaching out to the horizon, seems designed to capture this celestial dance, to bring the power of the moon down to earth for the benefit of the community. With the arrival of Christianity in the Hebrides many centuries later, the original meaning of the stones was lost, but their powerful presence demanded an explanation. Local folklore, passed down through generations, created a new myth to account for the silent, towering stones. The legend tells that these were not stones at all, but ancient giants who once roamed the land. When the Christian missionary Saint Kieran came to Lewis to spread the new faith, he encountered these giants. They refused to abandon their old pagan ways and convert to Christianity. As a punishment for their stubbornness, Saint Kieran turned them to stone where they stood, condemning them to stand in silent, eternal formation as a warning to others. This story is a beautiful example of how later cultures often rationalized the existence of prehistoric monuments they could no longer understand, weaving them into their own religious and moral frameworks. The giants frozen in stone became a permanent part of the landscape story, their defiance etched into the very rock. Today, the Callanish stones stand as a dual monument, a breathtaking feat of Neolithic engineering and astronomical wisdom, and a canvas for a rich tapestry of later legend, a place where the deep past and the more recent past coexist in the timeless Hebridean light. From the windswept peat bogs and lunar alignments of Callanish, we travel south to a very different yet equally breathtaking highland landscape. Nestled within a natural amphitheater of the Lake District Mountains in England, the Castlereagh stone circle seems to have been placed not just on the land but in active conversation with it. Erected around 3200 BCE, this is one of the earliest stone circles in the entire British Isles, a near contemporary of the Great Passage tombs in Ireland. Its 38 stones of local volcanic rock are arranged in a wide, flattened circle, but the layout is far from simple. The most captivating feature is a distinct group of 10 smaller stones set in a rectangular formation inside the main circle, a unique feature known as the sanctuary. This nested design suggests a space within a space, a more sacred or restricted area set apart from the main gathering ground, hinting at a complex ritual life with different levels of participation or ceremony. The true power of Castlereagh, however, lies in its relationship with the surrounding peaks. This is not a circle that ignores its setting, it embraces it. The stones are positioned with a deliberate sensitivity to the horizon, and several key alignments point towards significant mountain notches. The most prominent alignment is with the highest peak in the area, Helvellyn, to the southeast. More strikingly, the circle is oriented so that the midsummer sunrise appears over the eastern fells, while the most dramatic alignment occurs at Samhain, the ancient festival marking the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter. At this pivotal time of year, the sun would have set in a specific notch between two hills to the southwest, a celestial event that would have been perfectly framed from within the circle. This integration of mountain topography with solar cycles suggests the builders saw the landscape itself as a sacred, living part of their cosmology. The circle acted as a focal point, a place to observe and celebrate the sun's journey as it interacted with the eternal, unchanging forms of the mountains. But why build such a significant monument here in this specific valley? The answer may lie in something more tangible than celestial observation. The Lake District was the Neolithic equivalent of an industrial heartland for one of the most sought-after materials of the age, stone axe heads. The mountains to the north, particularly the Langdale Pikes, contain a unique type of volcanic tuff that can be knapped to create polished stone axes of exceptional quality and beauty. These Langdale axes were not just tools, they were prestige items traded across Britain for hundreds of miles. Castlereagh's location is strategically perfect. It sits at a natural meeting point of several valleys, a likely nexus for trade routes where groups from different regions would have gathered to exchange goods, ideas, and marriage partners. This leads to a compelling theory that Castlereagh was not solely a ritual space, but a multifunctional center, part astronomical observatory, part temple, and part bustling Neolithic marketplace. The large, open circle could have accommodated seasonal gatherings of people from far and wide. The inner sanctuary might have been where rituals were performed to bless the trade, or where the axes themselves were consecrated before being exchanged, transforming a practical object into a symbol of power and spiritual connection. The site, therefore, represents a beautiful fusion of the sacred and the economic. It was a place where communities reaffirmed their shared beliefs under the watchful eyes of the sun and the mountains, while simultaneously engaging in the networks of exchange that bound them together in a wider social world. Castlereagh stands as a monument to a society that saw no contradiction between spiritual wonder and practical enterprise, a place where the rhythm of the seasons, the value of fine stone, and the bonds of community were all woven together into a single, meaningful whole. Yet while the monuments of Northern Europe capture our imagination with their dramatic solstice alignments and lunar mysteries, our journey now takes us to a sun-drenched landscape where the roots of megalithic culture run even deeper. We travel southwest to the rolling hills of the Alentejo region in Portugal, to a site that whispers of a tradition that began not just centuries but entire millennia earlier. This is the Almenda's cromlech, a sprawling megalithic complex whose origins stretch back to an astonishing 6000 BCE. To stand among these stones is to walk in a sanctuary that was already ancient when the first stones of Stonehenge were still untouched in their quarries. This is not a single, neatly arranged circle, but something more organic and complex, a sacred landscape that evolved over 2,000 years of continuous use, a living chronicle of a spiritual tradition that endured for longer than the entire history of ancient Rome. The first thing that strikes you at Almenda's is its scale and arrangement. Unlike the formal, geometric circles of Britain, this complex is composed of 95 granite monoliths arranged in a unique double oval pattern, spread across a gentle, eastward-facing slope. The stones are not uniform giants. They vary greatly in size and shape, from rough, weathered boulders to taller, more carefully shaped pillars. The layout is divided into two main enclosures that were built in distinct phases. The lower, eastern enclosure is the oldest, dating from the early Neolithic period around 6000 BCE. Its stones are arranged in a more irregular circle. The upper, western enclosure was added centuries later, around 5000 BCE, and its stones form a more defined oval. This phased construction reveals a site that grew in importance over generations, with each new era adding its own layer of meaning and structure to the sacred ground. Walking from the older circle to the younger one is like moving through time, tracing the evolution of a society's architectural and spiritual ideas across a breathtakingly long timeline. What transforms Almenda's from a collection of stones into a profound astronomical observatory are the precise alignments etched into its design. The entire complex is oriented with a clear celestial purpose. The main axis of the double oval is carefully aligned to the azimuth of the sunrise on the equinoxes. This means that on the spring and autumn equinox, when day and night are of equal length, the sun would have risen directly over a specific point in the arrangement, casting long shadows that connected the stones in a dramatic play of light and geometry. But the alignments go even further. Several key stones within the complex are positioned to mark the solstices, the extreme points of the sun's journey north and south in the summer and winter. This was not a simple calendar. It was a sophisticated cosmological map built in stone, a permanent mechanism for tracking the seasons, predicting celestial events, and anchoring the community's rituals to the immutable cycles of the cosmos. For an early farming society, this knowledge was power, the power to know when to plant, when to harvest, and when to celebrate the turning of the year. Yet the true soul of Almenda's is not just in the positions of the stones, but in the messages carved upon them. Many of the monoliths are adorned with petroglyph shallow carvings pecked into the hard granite surface. These are not the dense, abstract spirals of Irish tombs, but a series of evocative, symbolic images. The most common and captivating motifs include circles, some with central dots, wavy lines that resemble serpents, and staff-like shapes or crooks. The carvings of snakes are particularly powerful. In many ancient cultures, the serpent was a potent symbol of rebirth, regeneration, and the earth's hidden energies because of its ability to shed its skin and emerge renewed. Their presence here suggests a belief system deeply connected to cycles of life, death, and the fertile power of the land. The staffs or crooks might represent symbols of authority, perhaps marking the stones associated with a shaman or a clan leader. What makes these carvings so fascinating is that they were not all created at once. They were added over centuries, with older symbols sometimes being recarved or incorporated into newer designs. This shows that the site remained a living, dynamic center of ritual and meaning for generation after generation. The stones became a permanent canvas for the community's evolving spiritual beliefs. Unlike the sealed chambers of a tomb, this was an open-air temple, a place where ceremonies were conducted under the sun and stars, where the changing light of the equinox sun would have illuminated different carvings, giving them life and meaning at specific moments in the sacred year. The Almenda's cromlech is more than an observatory or a temple. It is a library of stone, its pages inscribed with the hopes, fears, and cosmic understanding of a people who, for 2,000 years, gathered on this hillside to connect with the universe and with each other. Crossing from the rugged Atlantic coast of Portugal to the sun-scorched heart of southern Spain, we arrive at a monument that represents the absolute pinnacle of megalithic engineering in continental Europe. Nestled near the city of Antequera in Andalusia, the Dolmen of Menga is not merely a tomb. It is a breathtaking feat of Stone Age ambition that continues to baffle engineers and archaeologists today. Built around 3700 BCE, this is architecture on a truly heroic scale. From the outside, it appears as a massive, grass-covered hill, over 50 meters in diameter. But to step inside is to enter a monumental stone corridor that feels less like a burial chamber and more like an underground cathedral constructed by giants. The sheer size of the stones used in Menga is almost beyond belief. The structure is a classic passage grave, but one executed with staggering proportions. The entrance passage leads to a vast, rectangular chamber that is over 25 meters long. What holds up the immense weight of the earth mound above are three colossal central pillars, each a single quarried monolith. But the true showstopper is the capstone that spans the deepest part of the chamber. This single slab of limestone weighs an estimated 50 tons. Try to picture the logistics. A stone heavier than a modern tank was somehow quarried, transported, and then precisely maneuvered into place, resting on the tips of the upright pillars, all by a society that had not yet discovered metal tools or the wheel. The effort would have required the coordinated labor of hundreds, if not thousands, of people over many years, a testament to a society with a powerful, centralized authority and an unwavering collective purpose. Yet for all its impressive scale, the most captivating mystery of Menga lies not in its grandeur, but in a deep, dark hole in the ground. At the very back of the chamber, directly behind the third pillar, archaeologists discovered a deep, narrow shaft drilled straight down through the solid rock of the chamber floor. This is no casual feature. It is a perfectly cylindrical well descending over 19 meters into the earth. Its purpose remains one of the great enigmas of European prehistory. The most compelling theory is that it served a profound ritual function. It may have been a libation shaft, a conduit through which offerings, perhaps water, wine, or even blood, could be poured directly into the earth, reaching down to the underworld to appease chthonic deities or communicate with the ancestors buried within the tomb. Alternatively, it could have been a later addition, dug during the Bronze Age or even by the Romans, in a desperate search for treasure they believed was hidden beneath the mighty stones. Whatever its purpose, this dark shaft adds a layer of deep, unsettling mystery to the already awe-inspiring space. The sophistication of the Dolmen of Menga extends even to its celestial alignment. Unlike the classic passage graves of Ireland and France, which are typically oriented towards the rising or setting sun on the solstices, Menga's long axis points not to a solar event, but towards a distinctive mountain on the northeastern horizon known as La Peña de los Enamorados, or the Lover's Rock. This mountain, which strikingly resembles the face of a sleeping giant, holds its own sacred significance. However, recent investigations have revealed a more subtle astronomical connection. A small, carefully positioned opening in the entrance corridor allows the rays of the rising sun during the summer solstice to penetrate deep into the chamber, illuminating the central pillars for a few fleeting minutes. This suggests the builders were still deeply attuned to the solar cycle, but chose to integrate it with a prominent terrestrial landmark, creating a unique sacred geography that tied their monument to both the heavens and the earth. The most groundbreaking discovery about Menga, however, came not from studying the sky above it, but from probing the earth below. Using advanced geological surveying techniques, researchers made a startling revelation. The entire massive tomb was constructed directly over a natural spring. This was not a coincidence. The choice of location was deliberate and deeply symbolic. In the arid landscape of southern Spain, water was life itself, the most precious and sacred of resources. To build their great house for the dead atop a source of fresh, flowing water suggests they saw a direct connection between the life-giving power of the spring and the cycle of death and rebirth. The tomb was not just a sealed box for the deceased, it was a living part of the landscape, channeling the earth's energy. The ancestors resting atop this subterranean river were perhaps believed to be nourishing the land or acting as intermediaries between the world of the living and the vital forces of the earth. This discovery transforms our understanding of Menga from a purely funerary monument into a holistic sanctuary, a place where death, water, and the enduring spirit of the community flowed together as one. But our journey across Neolithic Europe has saved one of its most profound statements of power for last. To fully grasp the ambition of these ancient builders, we must now travel to the sun-baked plains of Andalusia in southern Spain, to a site that represents the absolute zenith of megalithic engineering on the continent. The Antequera Dolmen site, a UNESCO World Heritage location, is not a single tomb but a triad of monumental structures built between 3700 and 3200 BCE. This complex, comprising the dolmens of Menga, Vieira, and El Romeral, showcases a level of architectural sophistication and a unique relationship with the landscape that sets it completely apart from anything we have seen so far. Here, the builders did not just place their monuments on the land, they engineered them in direct, breathtaking dialogue with the very mountains on the horizon. The undisputed giant of the trio is the Dolmen of Menga. From the outside, it appears as a massive, man-made hill, but to pass through its entrance is to step into a world of staggering scale. This is not a narrow passage grave, it is a monumental hall, a megalithic cathedral stretching over 25 meters deep. The chamber is supported by 5 immense upright stones and 3 central pillars, but the true marvel rests above them. The largest capstone, a single slab of limestone, weighs an almost incomprehensible 180 tons. To put that into perspective, that is the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 757 airplane. The logistical feat of quarrying, transporting, and lifting this behemoth with only Neolithic technology, wooden rollers, levers, and raw human strength defies belief. It would have required the coordinated effort of hundreds of people over many seasons, a testament to a society with a powerful, centralized authority capable of mobilizing an entire population for a single, awe-inspiring project. What makes Menga truly unique, however, is its orientation. While most great passage graves like Newgrange are meticulously aligned to celestial events, Menga's builders look to the earth. The long axis of the tomb points precisely northeast, not toward a solstice sunrise, but directly at a singular natural feature, La Peña de los Enamorados, the Lover's Rock. This mountain, which strikingly resembles the profile of a sleeping giant, clearly held immense sacred significance. This terrestrial alignment suggests a cosmology deeply rooted in the land itself, where a prominent mountain was seen as a powerful deity or an ancestor, and the tomb was built to face this eternal sentinel. Recent studies have revealed a subtle solar connection. A small opening allows the summer solstice sunrise to glance off the mountain's silhouette and cast a beam of light into the chamber, but the primary focus was unmistakably on the mountain. The builders were connecting the house of the dead with a permanent feature of the living world, anchoring their ancestors to the most dominant landmark in their territory. Just a short walk from this colossal structure lies its sister tomb, the Dolmen of Vieira. Built a few centuries later, Vieira presents a striking contrast. Its design is the classic passage grave form we recognize from other parts of Europe, a long, narrow corridor made of large upright stones, leading to a small, rectangular burial chamber. The entrance is a masterpiece of megalithic precision, a perfectly square doorway formed by a massive lintel stone. The entire passage is oriented due east, precisely toward the equinox sunrise. This pure solar alignment shows that the builders of Antequera were fully aware of the astronomical traditions practiced elsewhere. They simply chose for Menga a different, more locally powerful focal point. Vieira feels like a more traditional, yet still immensely impressive tomb, its long, dark passage creating a powerful sense of journey from the world of the living to the sealed chamber of the dead. The third member of the complex, the Tholos of El Romeral, completes the architectural evolution. Built last around 2500 BCE, it introduces a revolutionary design. Instead of a long corridor of massive orthostats, El Romeral is a Tholos tomb, characterized by a long entrance passage that leads to two circular, beehive-shaped chambers roofed by stunning corbelled vaults. This technique, where successive rings of stones are laid overlapping each other until they meet at the top, is a hallmark of advanced engineering, but El Romeral's orientation is perhaps its most fascinating feature. Its long passage points southwest, away from the Lover's Rock and the sunrise, and instead aligns perfectly with another distant mountain, El Torcal, a spectacular range of karst limestone formations. Even more remarkably, this alignment frames the setting of the sun during the winter solstice. This trio of monuments, therefore, encapsulates a complete cosmological vision, one facing a sacred mountain, one facing the equinox sun, and one facing a different sacred mountain at the solstice sunset. The Antequera complex is a masterclass in diverse ritual expression. The human remains found within these tombs, particularly at Menga and Vieira, paint a vivid picture of the society that built them. The bones of hundreds of individuals were discovered, showing evidence of the same collective burial practices seen across Neolithic Europe. However, a chilling detail emerged from the analysis. Many of the skulls show signs of trepanation, the surgical practice of drilling or scraping a hole into the human skull, while some of these individuals showed signs of healing, indicating they survived the procedure. Many did not. This suggests that complex and risky medical or ritual practices were being performed. Furthermore, studies of the bones indicate a society that experienced significant physical stress, with evidence of arthritis, healed fractures, and periods of malnutrition. These were not a mythical race of giants. They were real people facing immense physical challenges, who nonetheless pooled their resources and their ingenuity to create monuments of everlasting grandeur. The Antequera dolmens stand as a breathtaking fusion of raw power, sophisticated engineering, and a deep, enduring spiritual connection to the land, a final, monumental testament to the Neolithic mind at its most ambitious. Yet even the staggering ambition of the Antequera complex cannot overshadow the single most iconic ancient structure on Earth, a monument whose silent, weathered stones have become a universal symbol of prehistoric mystery. Our journey now culminates on the chalk downlands of Salisbury Plain in southern England, at a site whose name echoes through time, Stonehenge. While its familiar trilithons are instantly recognizable, the true story of this place is far richer and more complex than its famous silhouette suggests. The monument we see today is actually the final chapter in a construction project that spanned 1,500 years. A saga of continual change and refinement that began around 3100 BCE. To understand Stonehenge, we must look past the grand Sarsen circle and see it not as a single act of creation, but as a dynamic, evolving ritual landscape that grew in sophistication over more than 50 generations. The very first Stonehenge was a surprisingly simple affair. Around 3100 BCE, Neolithic farmers dug a circular ditch and bank known as a henge, about 98 meters in diameter. Just inside the bank, they dug a ring of 56 mysterious pits, now called the Aubrey Holes after their 17th century discoverer. These pits likely held tall wooden posts or, as some evidence suggests, may have been used for the cremated remains of the dead, making the earliest Stonehenge a circular timber structure or a vast cremation cemetery, a place of the dead under the open sky. This initial phase already demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of geometry and a desire to mark a large, permanent space for ceremony. But the most astonishing undertaking of this early period was still to come, an endeavor that reveals a level of determination bordering on the fanatical, the journey of the Bluestones. Several centuries after the henge was first laid out, around 2500 BCE, the builders of Stonehenge embarked on a project of almost unbelievable difficulty. They decided to bring 80 or more large stones, known as bluestones for the bluish tint they reveal when wet or broken, all the way from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, a distance of over 140 miles. The logistics of this operation are staggering. Each of these dolerite and rhyolite stones weighed between 2 and 4 tons. The prevailing theory for decades was that these megaliths were laboriously dragged on wooden sledges and rollers down to the Welsh coast, floated on rafts up the Bristol Channel, and then dragged again across land to Salisbury Plain. This route alone would have been a monumental feat of organization, requiring cooperation between different communities and a deep knowledge of the landscape. However, recent geological and archaeological detective work has proposed an even more dramatic possibility. Some scientists now argue that these bluestones were not quarried by human hands at all, but were instead transported to the Salisbury Plain area by glaciers during the last ice age, thousands of years earlier. According to this theory, the Neolithic builders discovered these massive foreign stones already relatively close by, recognized their inherent power and uniqueness, and then organized the final, shorter but still immense journey to bring them to the Stonehenge site. Whether they traveled 140 miles or 20, the act of gathering these specific stones was deeply significant. These were not just convenient rocks, they were chosen. The Preseli Hills are home to numerous sacred springs and earlier ritual sites, suggesting the bluestones were already considered to hold special, perhaps even healing, properties. Bringing them to Stonehenge was an act of capturing and concentrating that distant sacred power, physically transporting a piece of a magical Welsh landscape to the heart of the Wessex Chalklands. The final and most dramatic phase of construction began around 2500 BCE, when the familiar icon we know today began to take shape. This involved the procurement and shaping of the gigantic sarsen stones. These are the colossal grey sandstones that form the outer circle and the iconic trilithons, the 3 stone structures of 2 uprights and a lintel. The sarsens were sourced from the Marlborough Downs, about 20 miles north of Stonehenge. While a shorter journey than the bluestones, the challenge was their sheer size. The largest sarsens weigh up to 30 tons. Shaping these monsters was a masterclass in Neolithic engineering. Using stone hammers, the builders painstakingly knapped the stones into shape, creating subtle curves, and on the uprights, tenons, stone knobs, that fit perfectly into mortise holes carved into the lintels above. This sophisticated woodworking technique, executed in stone, created an incredibly stable interlocking structure. The placement of these stones reveals a mind-boggling understanding of astronomy and geometry. The central axis of the monument is aligned to the midsummer sunrise in the northeast and the midwinter sunset in the southwest. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, a solitary sarsen placed outside the main circle, and its rays shine directly into the heart of the monument. This alignment was not a lucky guess, it was the result of precise, long-term observation. The entire layout is based on a complex Pythagorean triangle, a geometric principle that would not be formally defined for another 2,000 years. The builders encoded celestial and mathematical knowledge into the very fabric of the structure, creating a permanent, functioning astronomical observatory and a symbolic representation of their cosmos. For a long time, Stonehenge was viewed in isolation, a solitary temple on an empty plain. But groundbreaking technologies like ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry have completely rewritten this narrative, revealing that Stonehenge was merely the stone centerpiece of a vast and bustling ritual landscape. These surveys have uncovered the traces of a much larger, older circle of massive timber posts located just over 2 miles away at Durrington Walls. This superhenge would have been a monumental structure in its own right, a vibrant, noisy place for the living, contrasting with the silent, stone domain of the dead at Stonehenge. A processional avenue, now clearly mapped, connects Stonehenge to the River Avon, suggesting ceremonies involved a ritual journey from the world of the living at Durrington Walls, down the river, and up the avenue to the realm of the ancestors at Stonehenge. This new understanding paints a picture of a landscape humming with activity, especially during the solstices. We can now imagine thousands of people gathering from across Britain at Durrington Walls, feasting on pork and beef in massive timber halls. They would then process along the avenue, perhaps carrying the cremated remains of their dead or conducting rituals that mirrored the sun's journey. They would arrive at Stonehenge as the sun reached its extreme point, participating in a ceremony that linked the community, their ancestors, and the cosmic cycle in a single, powerful experience. Stonehenge was not an isolated temple for a secretive priesthood. It was the grand stage for one of the largest and most complex ritual gatherings in prehistoric Europe, a place where the sun, the stones, and the people came together in a spectacle that resonated for millennia. And so, our voyage across 10,000 years of human history comes to a close, from the hunter-gatherer stone circles of Göbekli Tepe to the astronomical mastery of Stonehenge. We have walked in the footsteps of our ancestors across continents, from the sunken plazas of Peru to the windswept tombs of the Orkney Islands, and the sheer diversity of their achievements is nothing short of breathtaking. These are not crude piles of rock, they are a global tapestry of ingenuity, each thread revealing a different facet of the human spirit. We have seen societies that chose to build towering pyramids for ritual, like Monte de Codi, and others that created comfortable, interconnected villages for the living, like Skara Brae. Some, like the builders of Newgrange and Michaud, demonstrated a profound connection to the cosmos, engineering precise alignments to capture the sun at its most potent moments. Others, like the artists of Gavrinis and Noth, covered their sacred spaces in a complex symbolic language, turning stone into a canvas for their cosmology. This incredible variety shatters any simplistic notion of a linear progression from primitive to advanced. Instead, it shows us a world where different cultures, in complete isolation from one another, simultaneously arrived at the revolutionary idea of building in stone for eternity, each expressing their unique beliefs and social structures in monumental form. What unites these scattered monuments, despite their vast differences in form and function, is the powerful testament they provide about the minds of our ancestors. These structures are a permanent record of a deep, universal yearning to understand our place in the universe. They speak of a time when the celestial and the terrestrial were intimately linked, when the cycles of the sun and moon were not abstract concepts but the very heartbeat of existence, governing the seasons, the harvests, and the journey of the soul after death. The precise alignments at Callanish for the lunar standstill or the equinox light at Loughcrew required generations of meticulous observation, a dedication to knowledge that rivals any modern scientific endeavor. This was not superstition. It was a sophisticated empirical science of the sky, born of necessity and wonder. Furthermore, the scale of these projects, the 90-ton capstone at Brownshill, the 180-ton monsters at Menga, reveals a capacity for social organization that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. To quarry, transport, and erect these stones required more than just muscle. It required visionary leadership, complex logistics, and a shared belief so powerful that it could motivate an entire community to labor for a goal they themselves might never see completed. They built not for their own glory, but for the glory of their ancestors, their gods, and the future generations who would inherit their land. These silent stones are the first chapters of our collective story, written in a language of earth and sky. They remind us that the drive to create, to seek meaning, and to connect with something greater than ourselves is an essential, enduring part of being human. The Neolithic world was not a dim prelude to history. It was a brilliant dawn bursting with innovation, spiritual depth, and a communal spirit capable of moving mountains literally. These builders looked at a landscape of rock and soil and saw potential, a calendar, a temple, a home for the dead, a connection to the divine. They teach us that human civilization is built on foundations of shared belief, collective effort, and an unshakable curiosity about the world around us. Now we turn the conversation over to you. After this journey through deep time, which of these ancient sites most captures your imagination? Is it the mysterious, animal-covered pillars of Göbekli Tepe which rewrote the story of civilization? The intimate, furniture-filled homes of Skara Brae, offering a window into daily life 5,000 years ago? Or perhaps the awe-inspiring celestial precision of Newgrange, where a beam of winter sunlight promises rebirth? Let us know in the comments below which monument you would most want to visit and why. Your curiosity is what keeps the story of our past alive. If you enjoyed unraveling these historical mysteries with us, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the forgotten corners of history. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey to the oldest structures on the planet.